Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. American Comics. I evolved into a Superman on my own. Chapter 1. In the wilderness of Tennessee, USA. There is a huge underground research base underneath the lifeless plane on the surface. A handsome young man in his early 20s was operating the computer with his fingers. There is a breastplate hanging on the left chest. The breastplate reads Shen Fei and a series of engravings. Researcher number 2103. Shen Fei is responsible for researching the super soldier serum, which is the power of idealism in the Marvel world. However, Shen Fei is not serving the US military, but serving a certain organization, Hydra. Shen, how is the situation now? The person in charge, Jason, stood aside, looking at the data in front of him and a huge machine running in front of him. Inside the machine was a volunteer who was struggling painfully. No, still not. Shen Fei shook his head. As the medicine was injected, the faces of the volunteers in the machine became more and more painful. Finally, in the eyes of the two people, the volunteers inside turned into a puddle of thick slurry. The bloody slurry spattered the entire surrounding machine with blood. Failed again. Jason growled, looked at Shen Fei and said, "Keep trying. We don't have much time." After saying that, Jason left the laboratory directly, leaving Shen Fei alone in the laboratory with uncertain eyes after hearing Jason's tone. Time is running out. The organization is not so kind to its subordinates. Shen Fei murmured, thinking of Hydra's methods of dealing with useless research institutes. Take away the research materials and eliminate everyone who knows the secret. They will send a special team to clean it up. It's not like he's going to die just after traveling through time. Shen Fei is not from here. He comes from the Earth in his previous life. He didn't expect that he would travel to Marvel and serve Hydra. In fact, it should be said that the predecessor served Hydra. This organization was extremely cruel to useless subordinates. Just use it as a tool. I hope these two abilities are more powerful. Shen Fei looked at the abilities he got when he traveled through time. This is his sole talent. Acquire abilities, Master of Scientific Research, and Spirit of Evolution. Lord of Scientific Research. You are the Master of Scientific Research. You have unparalleled scientific research capabilities. You can understand all the knowledge you want to understand and master it, and use it to research anything you want. Spirit of Evolution. Your body will have unlimited evolutionary potential, can accommodate everything, and receive the power that becomes itself to the greatest extent. The Master of Scientific Research can give Shen Fei the power to analyze all extraordinary things and allow him to create all extraordinary objects that exist in this world. He only needs to give him enough time to create everything. The Spirit of Evolution allows Shen Fei to integrate all extraordinary powers into himself, allowing Shen Fei, who was originally just an ordinary person, to evolve step by step into a powerful being. Today, Shen Fei is no longer the former Shen Fei who had no choice but to wait for death because he had no power to restrain the chicken. Instead, he is the Master of Scientific Research, with a terrifying scientific research power. Back then, Stark was able to research the Ark in the cave, so it makes sense that I, Shen Fei, could analyze the super soldier serum on my own. That's right, research on the super soldier serum. After all, now that there is ready-made information, Shen Fei naturally wants to master extraordinary power. Now that the super soldier serum is right in front of him, he naturally wants to use it for research. But this may need to be covered up. If Hydra knew that he had developed the super soldier serum, he would be imprisoned in the base to research various things for them even if he did not die. He didn't want to lose his freedom, so he didn't show any ability to develop the serum. He casually took the drink next to him and took a sip, just as he was about to slowly break through the super soldier serum. Warning, warning. Just as Shen Fei was constantly checking the formula, suddenly a violent warning sounded throughout the laboratory. Shen Fei was stunned for a moment. At this time, the voice of Jason, the person in charge of the laboratory, sounded in his laboratory. His voice was full of anxiety. "Shen, the cleanup team suddenly came. It is very likely that the organization will forcefully detonate this base." "Why?" Shen Fei asked quickly. "I don't know. All entrances and exits to the institute are now controlled. All the researchers except the security personnel were arrested." Quote. These words made Shen Fei frown and shut down Jason's conversation. "Shet, can't you give me a moment?" Shen Fei took a deep breath. He was too unlucky to have such a thing happen to him just after crossing over. Getting caught would definitely not end well. We have to escape. But how? Shen Fei's mind was running rapidly, and soon his eyes fell on the machine in front of him. This is a replica of the drug that Captain America injected at that time, which can provide energy to the injector. He is an ordinary person now, and the entrances and exits of the Institute are now tightly controlled. With Shen Fei's weak body, which has been researched for many years, he may be beaten to death before he can even take 2 steps. So he has only one way to break the situation. Research the super soldier serum before you get caught. Then he injected it into his own body and relied on the spirit of evolution to quickly absorb it, becoming a little Superman like Captain America. After confirming his idea, Shen Fei began to frantically calculate the remaining difficult problems. As the blank sheets of paper were filled with various formulas, Shen Fei continued to solve the problems that stuck in the research team's serum research. In the office of the head of the institute, a man wearing the clothes of a Hydra soldier was making a phone call. Jason was tied to a chair and listened to the soldier talking to the Baron. Lord Baron, researchers are constantly being captured. An extremely serious voice came from the phone. Well, prepare all the remaining data, clear all the backup data, and blast the base directly into waste without leaving any traces. Yes, remember not to leave any traces. The soldier skillfully turned on the surveillance camera to see if anyone was missed. At this time, he saw Shen Fei in the laboratory, took out his walkie-talkie and said, "There is someone else in laboratory too, go and catch him." Yes, a voice came from the intercom, and then he looked at Jason who was standing aside and said, "You scientific research wastes should die quickly, you are wasting so many resources of the organization. With these resources, the organization doesn't know how many soldiers it has trained." Quote. Jason stared at the Hydra soldiers and said coldly, "If it weren't for us, wouldn't you also be useless? What is your subordinate doing? It's not like he wants to study some serum. I really thought it could be researched, so I said that if the organization spends so many resources to research a certain serum, what is the use? It might as well be used to research exoskeletons." Quote. If you have this ability, go tell the Winter Soldier. Before Jason left, Shen Fei had actually been deducing the super soldier serum. Originally, there were 2 or 3 difficult problems that he planned to take his time. Who knew that the tissue removal would come so quickly? It almost made him exhausted his brain and kept calculating the final problem when Jason informed him. He's just cracking the last piece of the puzzle. It didn't take long. Shen Fei's face was pale, but his eyes were bright, looking at the perfect formula in his hand. This moment, Shen Fei sighed that he actually performed it. You must know that the US military, Hydra and other organizations cannot rededuce it. But in the end he got it out easily. Although Hydra has actually solved most of the problems, there are only a few extremely difficult problems that cannot be solved. But sometimes these few steps are the most critical. After all these years, only he has solved it. This is the terror of the master of scientific research. With this talent, Shen Fei believes that as long as he does not die, you can definitely climb to the highest point of this universe and take a look. The next step is to prepare the super soldier serum. If it can be prepared, use a machine to inject it. If I can succeed, getting out will be easy, and I will be able to protect myself. Quote. This research institute is just one of many groups researching serum. There are no incomplete super soldiers like the Winter Soldier, nor are there any superpowers. So even the Hydra soldiers who came to clear them out were just ordinary people, at most some veterans. A perfect super soldier is enough to kill here. Shen Fei closed the laboratory from the inside and then turned off the password lock outside. It can only be opened manually from the inside. This was originally to prevent foreign enemies from entering and buy time to destroy the data. Now it has become Shen Fei's last protective umbrella. The entire laboratory is made of tempered glass. Even if the heavily armed soldiers want to come in, it will take some time. This time is enough for me to inject the serum. After Shen Fei closed the door, he ran towards the experimental table. Various machines were turned on along the way, and soon there were several bottles of reagents in hand. In his hands, the reagents were constantly mixed together, alternating blue and green, precipitating various crystals, and then stirring them with a machine to extract the essence inside. The soldier who had been watching the surveillance in the office suddenly frowned slightly. What is this guy doing? Does he still want to solve the problem and prepare the serum in such a short time? The soldier captain sneered. You still think there will be a miracle? The entire organization is trying to restore the super soldier serum, and an ordinary researcher is begging for a miracle. It's really fanciful to imagine that you can escape by injecting serum. Quote. After thinking for a while, he took out the communication tool and said, Team 13 will go to Laboratory 2, and the rest of the team will continue to search for the other researchers. Otherwise, those crazy dogs from S.H.I.E.L.D. will come to our door. In the laboratory, Shen Fei, who was preparing medicine, glanced at the laboratory monitor. The constant flow of soldiers made the movements in his hands speed up. A pressure began to arise out of thin air, and it wouldn't take long for them to come to his door. Soon, bursts of hurried footsteps sounded outside the laboratory. Through the transparent glass, the heavily armed team immediately spotted Shen Fei's figure. Find Shen Fei. He is in the laboratory. He has turned on all the machines and seems to be working on something. The leading soldier said loudly to the pager. Use password. The combination lock is disabled. It can only be opened from the inside. Shoot me through the glass. The captain's voice was extremely cold. Is this guy challenging the authority of their cleanup team? A group of people began to raise their automatic rifles, and the metal storm immediately hit the glass. Bang 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 bang. Hearing the sound of the gunfire, cold sweat broke out on Shen Fei's forehead. He held the reagent's hand a little faster. It's just a little bit close, just a little bit close. Shen Fei gritted his teeth and was frantically squeezing his brain and arms. He was fast but not chaotic. Every step must be correct. He had no chance of failure. In the office, the soldier captain watching the surveillance saw Shen Fei's movements, frowned and said to himself, Isn't this guy really preparing the super soldier serum? Is this guy crazy? If you fail, you might as well just die. Quote. Is this guy scared out of his mind now? He had seen many volunteers who participated in the experiment, and even some of the corpses were handled by his team. I know how painful it would be to inject a failed volunteer. This is completely pushing yourself towards a dead end. But the soldier captain felt a little uneasy and turned on the phone. What happened? Sir, I have some information that I want to report to you. The other side of the United States. Baron Strucker was looking at a screen, which showed the inside of the institute. He saw Shen Fei tinkering with things in the laboratory, shook his head and said to the phone, Don't worry, take your time. If only the super soldier serum that the organization had been researching for so long was developed like this. The rest of the people are so useless. Quote, he just took a look at the information Shen Fei called, but didn't take it to heart. If the super soldier serum could be researched so easily, what would Hydra's years of research mean? In the office, the soldier captain heard the adult's indifferent tone and did not express his worries, so he had to hang up the phone. Outside the laboratory, there was continuous shooting, and finally a small crack appeared in the glass. See here. The members of the cleanup team all showed a smile, and the turtle shell was finally broken by them. It's really hard to fight. Shit, we wasted so much energy and bullets just for this one person. Seeing that Shen Fei was still messing with him inside, the members of the cleaning team sneered. Go on, I'm going to use that guy as a target for some fun. Who knows, if he comes up with that terrible reagent, we will still be good people to help him out. Ha ha ha. Shen Fei stopped what he was doing and started shaking the test tube in his hand. The colorless liquid in the test tube began to change color, and soon a liquid as bright as sapphire flowed inside, like a work of art. Looking at the liquid inside, Shen Fei breathed a sigh of relief and finally figured it out. Super soldier serum. But this serum cannot be injected directly, it needs to enter the machine. Direct injection would only prevent the physical body from being nourished by energy, and then directly drain the energy from the human body, which would turn it into a mummy. Shen Fei did not want to become a mummy himself. Seeing the broken glass, he quickly started the machine and put the serum into it. The whole person lies inside the machine. Super soldier, activate. When people outside saw Shen Fei's whole body lying inside the machine, they were all people who had experienced it many times and even participated in some experiments. Those who knew the inside story all smiled. This guy is really looking for death. He might as well die in our hands. Although I haven't tried the failed serum, I have seen it. The man even begged me to let me get rid of him. This kid is crazy. Among the offices, the soldier saw this scene and saw Shen Fei lying in, and thought of the Baron's words. He also dispelled his uneasiness. This guy was dead. The soldier watched Shen Fei inject all the serum and then called to report the situation. After Shen Fei lay down in the machine, tubes were attached to his body, and sapphire-like medicine was injected into his muscles. In an instant, he felt extreme pain, and his whole body seemed to be torn apart. Pain. Shen Fei knew it would be painful, but he didn't expect it to be so painful. The severe pain that invaded his nerves made him want to faint, but he knew that he could not faint. Once he fainted, he would never be able to wake up. Without will as the driving force to control one's body, the body will eventually collapse. This is why he asked the beauty pageant team to serve as a volunteer in the first place, and why he will succeed. Although he is weak, his will is very strong, so he became the target of the super soldier. Sweat was pouring all over Shen Fei's body, and his body was shaking constantly. He was trying his best to control his muscles, and his eyes popped out as if they were about to fall out. Hold on to. Shen Fei roared in his heart. As long as he survives this time, relying on his talent, he will be able to navigate the universe and even touch the upper limit of this world. It's not like the ball is dead just after crossing over. And now that the serum was successfully injected and he died because he couldn't bear it, then he was such a waste. He finally managed to travel through time, and he even had such a heaven-defying talent. He was not willing to die. At this time, Shen Fei's muscles were growing rapidly, and the power in the research base was constantly being drained. You must know that when Captain America became a super soldier, he drained almost half of the city's power before he succeeded. Although his evolution spirit can help him quickly integrate potions, it cannot make up for this energy consumption. The power pouring in from the outside was like countless magma flowing inside his body, almost burning all his muscles. This extremely hot energy is more terrifying than the tearing pain when I just injected it. Shen Fei held his palm tightly, his nails were embedded in his flesh, and blood flowed from the scratched wound, but this pain had long been covered by the pain all over his body. The muscles in his entire body seemed to be swelling, like a monster made of sarcoma. The cleaning team members outside were a little scared when they saw this scene in the machine. This is what the experimental subject that failed to be injected with the serum looked like. It would be better to be shot dead by me. What on earth are you thinking about if you still suffer such pain before you die? The leader of the cleanup team couldn't help but sneer. Stop chatting, kill him quickly and end it. The reinforced bulletproof glass is full of cracks. Although the cleanup team knew that this guy was dead, it was safer to die by their hands after all. The metal storm continued to sweep across the glass, and it shattered instantly with a bang. The cleanup team members all showed a smile when they saw this. It's finally broken. I'll buy some of this glass in the future so I won't be afraid of bullets when I put it at home. Go in and give this guy a few bullets and be done with it. He, look at me. I promise to make him painless. A group of people rushed in, and the glass was in the laboratory before it broke. In the office, the soldier answered the phone and said to the phone, Baron, he just injected himself with the serum that failed. It's still worse than death now. It won't take long. Suddenly, the soldier captain's words came to an abrupt end, followed by a sound of gasping air. What happened? The Baron suddenly felt something was wrong. He's not dead. The soldier captain's words were full of disbelief. Now in the laboratory, Shen Fei maintained his willpower not to lose consciousness, after enduring waves of pain. The spirit of evolution has finally done its job. Warm currents surged up in his body, constantly absorbing the electricity transmitted from the machine, strengthening Shen Fei's body. And at this time, wave after wave of strength surged up, causing Shen Fei's originally thin body to begin to swell, and his muscles were filled with explosive power. A large amount of steam spread from the opened machine. Shen Fei clenched his fist and felt the power in his palm. Is this the spirit of evolution? It can absorb all the potions in such a short time. At this time, when he heard the bulletproof glass shattering, Shen Fei's eyes flashed with a cold light. It's my home court next. Picking up the surgical scissors prepared early in the morning, this thing was originally used to dissect the volunteers who failed the experiment. Now they have a better purpose. The sharp scissors are powerful enough to become a murderous weapon. After walking out of the machine, Shen Fei was naked, holding on to the bulletproof glass pulled out of the machine, and rolled over very quickly to hide behind the experimental table. The team members who rushed in knew something was wrong when they saw the steam spreading from the machine. Yelled, "Shoot, shoot!" But Shen Fei had already hid behind the experimental table like lightning. The members of the cleanup team looked at each other with shock in their eyes. Holy crap, he's not dead. How could this happen? This man is so fast. Did he succeed? The leader of the cleanup team, with a flash of fear in his eyes, quickly picked up the walkie-talkie and said, "Captain, he seems to have succeeded." The only one who was still alive after being injected with the serum was Shen Fei. The rest were turned into thick pulp and disposed of. "I've seen it," the soldier's voice came from the intercom. Also full of horror. The Baron on the other side of the phone asked loudly, "What on earth is going on?" "My lord, he is not dead." The soldier captain's voice was full of terror, but he knew how strong the super soldiers were. "What if there is an extra super soldier in the research institute?" But the Baron's voice was full of excitement. It actually worked. Unexpectedly, an ordinary researcher actually developed the super soldier serum. "Bring him back to me. Let your men test whether he really succeeded." Inside the laboratory, the security personnel remembered that they had seen Captain America's performance before, and the fear in their hearts prompted them to shoot continuously. It's just that the metal table is almost all solid metal, and the bullets can only leave small holes and cannot hurt Shen Fei at all. They moved towards the back of the experimental table while shooting. Even super soldiers would be injured if they were shot, and they would die if they were injured. Then Shen Fei, who was leaning against the experimental table, listened to the location of the gunfire and estimated the location with the help of a mirror in the distance. He moved in an instant, rolled over and stood up from the other side of the experimental table, pulling off a white coat and putting it on himself. He quickly dodged, his brain still frantically calculating the route as he moved, crossing several platforms at once. He held the bulletproof casing of the machine in his right hand, and a scalpel in his left hand, which he had just picked up. The scalpel is suitable for close combat. After 2 steps into the crowd, the initially frightened security personnel began to shoot. But even though the gunshots continued, Shen Fei still calmly judged the situation, and the bulletproof shell in his hand kept blocking bullets, making bang 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 sounds. With his current reaction, these bullets can't hurt him at all, let alone a shield. This bulletproof shield is quite durable. As he rushed into the crowd, with the scalpel in his hand and his strong physique, he was like a tiger among the sheep, and the situation was instantly reversed. In his eyes, these security personnel, who were considered physically strong among ordinary people, were about as fast as a child. As soon as the other party raised the muzzle of the gun and pointed it at him, he came in front of him, and the scalpel in his hand suddenly brought out a burst of blood. Poof, poof. Warm and sticky blood spurted out under the pressure inside the body, and fell on Shen Fei's face. Not a moment. Like chopping melons and vegetables, Shen Fei kept cutting his throat with the scalpel to solve it. Noisy sounds rang out, and now the entire laboratory was quiet. Only the blood on the ground was spreading. Only Shen Fei was left standing. His white coat and face were stained with blood, and his face looked like a demon from hell. "The next step is to go to the main control room," Shen Fei murmured. "There is still some information in the main control room that he must get, otherwise, it will all be wasted. Pick up a gun and body armor on the ground, put them on, and prepare the magazine. He must get the data and leave quickly. He is just a super soldier now, not everyone is Captain America. If the opponent sends a mutilated super soldier like the Winter Soldier, it will be difficult for him to fight with 2 fists, and he may also overturn. He has a grudge against Hydra, and when he becomes stronger, he can easily destroy it. With his current talent, he has this confidence. It's just that before he goes out, he needs to get the rest of the information in this institute. The things in there can help him grow quickly. He is not the protagonist of the Avengers, and a super serum alone is enough. He needs stronger power to deal with Hydra and the crises that exist in the future. Shen Fei rushed outside. When the soldier captain saw this scene, his whole body trembled and his pupils shrank. With his performance just now, Shen Fei has definitely become a super soldier, and even has a sense of autonomy. His voice trembled slightly. How is this possible? The Baron continued to ask with excitement in his voice. Has the test come out? All he could see was blazing fire. Shen Fei's movements were too fast. By the time he connected to the surveillance system, it was already over. Sir, Shen Fei seems to have succeeded. The soldier captain said quickly and adjusted the surveillance to the route Shen Fei had just taken. During the surveillance, a black-haired young man wearing a bloody white coat was running wildly in the corridor. His eyes were normal and calm, without the madness of those incomplete super soldiers. Seeing Shen Fei's appearance, Strack asked, "Is this a successful example?" "Yes, it is." Baron Strucker stood up quickly and yelled, "Then what are you doing, you loser? Capture this guy alive. He is a genius and a perfect sample. You must not kill him. Quote, catch his words. Promote you to the captain of 10 teams. Baron Strucker never expected that there would be an unexpected surprise. A researcher who had no solution would actually unleash unlimited potential in order to escape. The super soldier serum was developed. Just to be on the safe side, he immediately made another call. Send me a team and rush to research base number 31 to capture a person named Shen Fei. Awaken another group of super soldiers to support you. As long as Shen Fei is caught, all this garbage will be useless. Quote, the super soldiers now controlled by Hydra are all flawed, easily lose control, and usually freeze. Wait until you need to use it before waking it up. Moreover, this kind of failed product not only requires some strong-willed soldiers as raw materials, but the success rate is still low, and mass production is simply impossible. If only I could get the perfect super soldier serum. There is no need for this garbage, a researcher can use it, let alone a soldier. By then, he will have a bunch of super soldiers similar to Captain America under his command. Enough to defeat the trash of S.H.I.E.L.D. Thinking of this, Baron Strucker has already begun to fantasize. In the office, the soldier captain was also a little excited when he heard the Baron's arrangement. He became the captain of 10 teams, so he no longer had to worry about being eliminated by the organization at any time. Thinking of this, he hurriedly picked up the walkie-talkie and shouted loudly, "Security personnel, stop him, but remember not to use guns. You must capture him alive. If he dies, you will not survive." After receiving the order, the security personnel in the institute ran towards the laboratory in teams. Soon, they collided with Shen Fei, who rushed out. The battle broke out in an instant. In the aisle, firearms were not easy to use, and Shen Fei was extremely fast, so he rushed into the crowd in one sprint. Then he started to kill, raised the knife in his hand, and grabbed a person to use as a shield. Screams and the sound of air leaking from a cutthroat were heard one after another, and blood continued to surge on the ground. Security personnel fell to the ground holding their throats, and the security personnel coming from a distance were hit by a corpse. Then a series of bullets were fired, and the security personnel fell down one by one. Soon, Shen Fei arrived at the data control room. He rushed in and killed all the security personnel without saying a word. Start typing on the keyboard quickly to copy all the important data inside to a hard drive. One of the information. It's called Weapon X Program. Yes, it was the plan that created Deadpool, Wolf Girl, and Wolverine. His next target is Logan. That Wolverine. Wolverine's terrifying self-healing factor is his next goal. As long as he doesn't die, all his plans can be realized. Shen Fei must obtain this ability, and the key is that there are already successful experimental samples of Wolverine's self-healing ability. Deadpool and Wolf Girl, so he hopes to get something that is highly practical and easy to obtain. This ensures that he has strong self-protection capabilities and a sample of success. Naturally, it was Shen Fei's first choice. Of course, not only Wolverine, but also other superpowers information has been transferred to the hard drive. These people will all be the puzzle piece of Shen Fei's future path. A few hours after traveling back in time, Shen Fei had already thought about the future path. This is the world of Marvel. When talking about Marvel, it is natural to avoid American comics. When talking about American comics, one of the most powerful characters is Dachau, who is known as the god of the world. There are many forms of super, such as small town super, silver super, gold super, and even the later thinking super, etc. He plans to rely on his own ability to bring the human god, himself, into this world. Starting with the super soldier serum and getting to this stuff. He already knew his future evolutionary route, the abilities he needed to acquire, and who he was going to target. He had already planned it. He had a rough plan for Superman's basic abilities. Of course, he knew that this road would be somewhat difficult and that he would even have to face many enemies. But he has the confidence given to him by the master of scientific research and the spirit of evolution, as well as his own understanding of the Marvel world. Shen Fei is confident that he can recreate the human god here. As Shen Fei kept typing on the keyboard, a large amount of data was downloaded. He stuffed the copied hard drive into his arms. Time to go. Shen Fei whispered, and then burst out. He rushed out of the main control room with a swish. There were already security personnel waiting outside, but they were only armed with melee weapons and could not use guns. Because this is an order, they need to capture Shen Fei alive. If Shen Fei dies, they will be buried with him. But when they faced Shen Fei, who had changed to a tactical dagger, they couldn't stop him at all. A life would be lost if the knife fell from his hand. In a short period of time, Shen Fei fought bloody battles and rushed towards the gate of the research institute. The soldier captain watching this scene from the surveillance camera frowned. These trash, haven't the support arrived yet? He has already seen that if this continues, Shen Fei, who will never be stopped by those losers, will have no choice but to let Shen Fei rush out. In that case, his credit will be lost. Use a gas bomb for me, as long as you don't die. The soldier captain yelled over the intercom that these security guards also have cerebral palsy. If they can't be shot with guns, why not stun them with psychedelia? At this moment, another Hydra base in Tennessee, after receiving the order. Military trucks filled with people rushed out of the base and sped towards the research institute. In order to avoid being targeted by some nosy people, they deliberately divided into more than a dozen teams and ran towards the institute from different paths. Among these military trucks are well-equipped elite veterans, soldiers who have been in the war for many years. Besides, a stealth fighter also took off from the Hydra base and flew towards Shen Fei's research institute. Among the fighters, there were 4 super soldiers sitting inside, their eyes cold and lifeless, sitting upright, like programmed robots. In the research institute, the soldier captain frowned and said coldly, I really thought super soldiers could be so cruel. Fortunately, their cleanup team was prepared for unexpected situations. Then he took out a phone and said, Team 1 is equipped with exoskeleton armor and is going to catch Shen Fei. Soon, 5 people wearing exoskeleton armor rushed towards where Shen Fei was now. Equipped with exoskeleton armor, the 5 of them were extremely fast. In a passing hall, Shen Fei relied on his inhuman speed to keep jumping over various shelters. Both the power of close combat and the level of firearms are constantly developing. With his current learning ability, he only needs to learn it 2 or 3 times to almost master it. It's just that during the fierce fighting, these guys used various gas bombs, tear gas bombs, etc. Even though Shen Fei's current physique is inhuman and he is extremely resistant to these things, if there are too many of them, it will have some impact, and sometimes he will be affected. They would be scratched or even shot. After all, some people would die at the hands of Shen Fei without using a gun. Fear has prevented them from continuing to follow the soldier captain's order to capture Shen Fei alive. So Shen Fei also had various wounds on his body. The pain caused by it also continued to stimulate Shen Fei, but this pain was compared to the pain caused by absorbing the serum before. That is a small witch making a big witch appear. Shen Fei didn't even frown. He still calmly held the gun with both hands and shot the security personnel in the throat one by one. We're almost there. Shen Fei looked at the gate to the outside world not far away. As long as he passed there, the sea would be vast and he could jump. The next time I see Hydra, I won't let them go so easily. Just at this time, swish swish swish, 5 rapid figures burst out and rushed towards Shen Fei. They also knew that Shen Fei had an amazing physique and did not stop at all. Shen Fei felt the crisis rushing into his heart instantly, and his gun immediately shot at the people who were rushing towards him. Bang bang bang. The opponent raised his steel arm and blocked the bullet with a bang bang bang. He continued to accelerate and punched Shen Fei with great force. Shen Fei quickly set up his gun as a shield. Boom, Boom, boom. The successive bombardments caused the rifle in Shen Fei's hand to suddenly deform. 5 enemies came from all directions, making it extremely difficult for Shen Fei to deal with them. He could only resist and retreat. Shen Fei saw the exoskeleton armor worn by the person opposite him, but he didn't expect that there was such a thing in this research institute. But he just experienced it, and the power provided by this exoskeleton is just this, slightly inferior to him. And it's not as flexible as him. If there was only one, he could handle it himself. But now there are 5 people wearing exoskeleton armor, and these 5 people still look like veterans. The mutual cooperation is extremely good. If Shen Fei catches one person and beats him, the other 4 will attack Shen Fei's vital points to rescue that person. With the cooperation of the 5 people, Shen Fei was only one step away from going out, but he was still stopped here. This exoskeleton is so disgusting. Suddenly, the word exoskeleton flashed in Shen Fei's mind. He remembered that exoskeletons had not been used on the battlefield for a long time because they were easily damaged by many things, such as electromagnetic pulses, high voltages, and even various chemical substances. In addition to the initial exoskeleton, most of the key circuits will be exposed for portability and weight reduction. Shen Fei's eyes fell on the circuits and power pistons inside these people's exoskeletons. There is no shielding outside at all. Soon, Shen Fei's mind flashed. He thought of something, and his peripheral vision fell into a nearby laboratory. When these 5 soldiers saw that Shen Fei, who had been killing everyone, was defeated one after another under their hands, they couldn't help laughing. "We won't kill you, so you should give up quickly. If you come back with us, you will still have a high status." Quote, "It's better to admit defeat. Under the siege of the 5 of us, you can't escape at all. Although we can't kill you, we can still make you suffer a little." Quote. Shen Fei calmly continued to deal with it. When he fought back the 2 fists, he took one forcefully and kicked the steel table away, hitting the 5 people. One of the 5 men punched through the steel table, causing fragments to fly in all directions. The rest of the people were also temporarily blocked from view by the steel table. Taking advantage of this moment, Shen Fei ran away and headed towards the laboratory. The 5 of them saw that Shen Fei did not run towards the door, but turned around and ran to the laboratory. What on earth was this guy thinking? There was definitely no way for Shen Fei to survive, so he immediately ran towards Shen Fei in his armor. In the office, the soldier captain saw Shen Fei rushing to the laboratory, took a look at the structure of the institute, and sneered, "It's just an ordinary laboratory, there is not even corrosive liquid. What other means do you want to rely on to deal with the elite soldiers?" Quote. He smiled excitedly and said, "I didn't expect that just a simple cleaning task could yield such a harvest. As long as I get the favor of Lord Baron, I will take off." Quote. This small laboratory is not very far away. Shen Fei rushed into the small laboratory in a few sprints and locked it immediately after entering. Hydra was very wealthy and the materials used in these laboratories were quite strong. It can last for a while. He just needs a little time. Boom, boom. The elite team that followed continued to bombard the door, and the door kept making dents. It didn't take long for them to rush in. Outside the door, the head of the elite team yelled, "Don't waste your efforts, this thing can hardly stop us. Come out quickly, otherwise we will waste everyone's time. If you are caught by us, you will definitely suffer a lot." But now Shen Fei has been dismantling various experimental equipment, and quickly hid in the surveillance corner to assemble it. The door can still hold for half a minute. This half minute is enough. He planned to build a high-voltage generator that could instantly increase the tiny voltage to an extremely terrifying level. Many of these electronic devices exist, and there are even many complete high-voltage generators in the laboratory. However, these high-voltage generators have protective measures. Once they are incomplete, it will be difficult to erupt with strong high voltage. Shen Fei now wants to remove the protective measures. Create something that can release high pressure without restraint. Although this kind of high-voltage low-current high-voltage generator is difficult to kill, it is more likely to give people a feeling of instant electric shock, unless it is too high or bad luck. When the voltage passes through the heart, it instantly stops the heart. Otherwise, it will be more of a short-term muscle paralysis and then paralysis. And the key is that a sudden burst of high pressure will cause certain components in mechanical products to burn out instantly. Things like exoskeletons will be almost impossible to move as long as one component is burned out. At that time, the exoskeleton that originally provided great strength would become a cage that imprisoned them. Shen Fei quickly disassembled things and took out the circuit board and copper wire. His hands were moving quickly, welding the circuit board and wrapping the wires around. From time to time, he raised his head to look around and look at the door that was about to be destroyed. Boom, creak. The door already made an overwhelming sound, banging. The door opened and Shen Fei finished. A high-voltage generator like a stick appeared in his hand. If you block this place, he will have nowhere to escape. One of the people they left blocked the door. Shen Fei ran in just to seek death. Looking at Shen Fei who was waiting for him, the leader roared, "Leave one more person to support him, be careful he has electric shock equipment under his hands." But at this time, Shen Fei had already sprinted in front of him. Watch the stick in his hand. Don't get hit by him. I thought he had done something. Isn't this an electric shock prod? Our exoskeleton has long been coated with a layer of anti-electricity paint. Do you really think it's useful? Even if you knock it on your body, you won't be able to transmit electricity. Quote. Someone sneered. The captain and the other two people also rushed towards Shen Fei at the same time, but the next moment they found that the captain suddenly stopped moving, and heard the captain growl, "Be careful, ah." But the next moment, a huge arc of electricity fell on them. For a moment, the exoskeleton made a small popping sound of bang bang bang, and then lost power. Shen Fei was like a thunder god who controlled thunder and lightning. He waved the copper coil in his hand, and the exoskeleton on the person next to him also made a bang 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 sound. Before the people blocking the door could figure it out, they heard the captain's call, but a copper coil had already fallen on his exoskeleton. 5 people and 5 exoskeletons stood in place. The 5 people were stunned, feeling the numb muscles all over their bodies. At this time, Shen Fei said with a smile, "Not to mention that your anti-electrical paint is not fully coated, and you know I don't understand what the breakdown effect is. A group of orangutans who only have brute strength and know nothing." Quote. As he spoke, the scalpel fell from his hand. Poof, poof. Continuous blood spurted out, and the 5 people's eyes lost their look. They couldn't understand what Shen Fei meant before they died. Before leaving, Shen Fei made an international gesture towards the surveillance camera and said loudly. He used a scalpel to cut the circuits of the exoskeleton and remove the 2 power supplies that were not damaged by the high voltage. The weight did not matter to him, but the power supply was a sharp weapon to him. It can even be used as a bomb. After he was done with it, he threw away the high-voltage generator, which had almost drained all its power, and rushed towards the outer door with the scalpel in hand and the power source in hand. Because he knew that Hydra's support would be constant, and whoever the boss of this base was would know the importance of the super soldier serum. If he stays here they will definitely come to catch him. So he must leave quickly, otherwise, he will not be able to leave by then. He raised the gun he had just picked up and kept firing at the security guards who were chasing him. Without an exoskeleton, how could these people block the bullets? Continuous screams rang out, and at this time, Shen Fei had already rushed out of the door. Going up the stairs one after another, this base is underground in the wasteland. Fortunately, it is not very deep, and stairs are used to move around. Otherwise, Shen Fei would be in more trouble if he rushed out. His eyes fell on the car in the wasteland. It was a jeep. The cage on it was used to transport volunteers. He smashed the glass with one punch, threw the object into the passenger seat, pulled out the 2 live wires from the keyhole and tied them together. Boom! A huge engine sound sounded. The car started, and the remaining bullets from the gun were used to pierce the rear wheels of other vehicles. The sound of air leakage was heard after the tires were blown out. As soon as Shen Fei stepped on the accelerator, the jeep flew away, raising dust in the wasteland. The strong wind howled outside the window, and the dust-laden air poured into his nasal cavity, washing away the rich smell of blood in his nasal cavity. This moment, Shen Fei really felt that he was free. He looked at the road ahead and escaped from there. The world was now free for him to roam. Of course, he understood that things were definitely not over yet. Hydra will definitely be chasing after him like a mad dog, desperately searching for his traces and biting him. They won't allow Shen Fei to walk around with the perfect super soldier serum. so he can't relax yet. Next, he needs to find Logan, study his self-healing factor and copy it to his body. It's just that he needs to make some preparations in advance. You must know that Logan is now Wolverine, and all his bones are made of adamant metal, which is extremely hard. Even if he has the super soldier serum, he can't withstand it. But the metal can no longer be found. It was impossible for it to flow outside and had been recycled a long time ago, so he could only find vibranium, which was similar to Edmund metal but was a natural metal, as a means of protecting Wolverine. Just on his way to find Wolverine, there will be a vibranium dealer named Crow. It can be said that he is the source of most of the vibranium currently circulating in the market because he is from Wakanda. This vibranium dealer was in Avengers 2 not long ago, but he sold a lot of vibranium to Ultron. Otherwise, how could Ultron build a vibranium body? But he didn't expect that Ultron would cut off an arm just because he said the wrong thing. It just so happens that the vibranium this guy has is sold to villains, so it doesn't hurt to use it himself. Shen Fei pressed the accelerator to the floor, and the jeep sped out instantly, kicking up clouds of sand and dust. With a swift movement, Jeep disappeared from the sight of everyone running out of the base. The soldier captain looked at the disappearing car and yelled. He asked people to chase him quickly, but soon the security personnel discovered that all the rear wheels of the car were protruded. They were so angry that they kicked a car door. Shen Fei. Boss, he is driving our prison car. In order to escape with those goods, he specially installed a tracking device on the car. A person next to him took out a laptop and said quickly. Under his tapping, a line soon appeared in front of them, and this line continued to extend. Seeing this, the soldier captain showed a smile on his face. Very good, very good. At this time, a fighter plane broke through the clouds, swooped down, and finally landed at the entrance of the research institute. When the soldier captain saw this fighter plane, his eyes lit up. The super team sent by Your Excellency has arrived. This sinking is inevitable. Several heavily armed super soldiers jumped out of the fighter plane. Seeing these super soldiers, even the elite security personnel couldn't help but tighten their faces. After all, they have all seen the ferocity of these super soldiers, and even the protagonists in some of their fighting skills videos are these super soldiers. Seeing these super soldiers, the soldier captain quickly walked up and said with a smile, "Everyone, this guy is already being followed by us. We can catch up with him as long as we hold this computer. This guy definitely can't run far." Quote, the leader of the super team took the computer, glanced at it and nodded, "Follow your orders. Let's execute them all." As soon as the words fell, everyone was stunned. What happened? But before he could react, the super soldier behind the man quickly raised his gun and began to kill these people quickly. Gunshots and screams rang out one after another, and blood flowers appeared on the wasteland, and blood flowed on the sand. The leader of the super soldiers was on the phone reporting the situation. "Well, send people to clean out the entire institute and put the data on the fighter planes. Especially the laboratory where Shen Fei was at that time. Brought me back the remaining samples. Then go catch Shen Fei." Quote, yes, in a small town. Now Shen Fei looked at Brother Ni and said, "I'll sell you this car for 2,000. 2,000, are you sure?" Brother Ni looked at Jip beside him and was a little moved. If it weren't for the gun on the yellow-skinned monkey and the blood-stained white coat on his body, he would have taken action directly. But it's not a loss now, it only costs $2,000. This is a big deal. After a while, Shen Fei watched Brother Ni drive the jeep away, shook his head and walked into the pharmacy. He still needed something to get on the road safely. Not long after, Shen Fei came out of a bar. His face had changed slightly, his skin was much fairer, and his clothes had also been changed. "Chase slowly. By the time you find me, I will no longer be able to compete with you." Shen Fei shook his head, came to the stable next to the bar, looked at a cowboy who was feeding grass, and said, "If you give me a ride, this 1,000 knives and your own life will be yours." The cowboy looked at Shen Fei, who was directly pointing a gun at his head to discuss business. He nodded sincerely and said, Yes, brother, where do you want me to take you?" "Here." Shen Fei reported a location. The cowboy nodded quickly and said, "I know where it is." The two horses took the two people and started running towards the next town. On a road, Brother Nee was humming rap and driving a Jeep that he just got. The performance of this car is very good. If he plays with it for a while and then sells it, he can make a lot of money. But he didn't realize that a fighter plane was staring at him in the sky. The leader of the super soldier inside the fighter plane looked at the Jeep underneath and called to report. The research institute has activated the self-destruct function and all data has been transferred. Where's Shen Fei? Not lost yet. Okay, go get him. Da da da. A series of flames shot out from the fighter plane. Brother Nee, who was originally humming a tune, was startled when he saw the sudden burst of flames in front of him and quickly stepped on the brakes. Brother Nee quickly opened the car door, squatted down with his head in his hands, and said loudly, "I am an American, not a smuggler." Several figures suddenly fell in front of Brother Nee's eyes. The super soldier at the head frowned and growled, "Who are you?" Never mind." The person next to him casually shot him, and the bullet hit Brother Nee between his eyebrows. Brother Nee fell to the ground with a look of horror on his face. "Sir, the person in this car is not Shen Fei. His previous car image has been out of surveillance. It must have been changed at that time. Turn on the radar and satellite and see who is using the navigation." This guy could still think of this when he was running for his life. Check out Crow's place. Quote, the Baron's voice was not broken. How easy would it be for Hydra to find someone in the United States? That is, in the wasteland. If it were in the city, it wouldn't take long for a special team to catch Shen Fei. Yes, the super soldier captain with a metal arm signaled them to blow up the car and return to the fighter plane. Start connecting various devices to look for traces of Shen Fei. On the other side, the cowboy put Shen Fei down respectfully. He originally planned to throw Shen Fei off the horse on the way. Who would have thought that Shen Fei, who didn't seem to be good at horses at first, would ride for a while? Although he is not said to have become a veteran among horses, the fierce horses under his control are not too rebellious. In addition, Shen Fei had the gun in his hand, so he had no choice but to send Shen Fei here obediently. Soon, Shen Fei walked into the bar, and soon he found that the people sitting in the bar looked a little unkind. Originally he wanted to do something, but after seeing the gun on Shen Fei's waist, he looked away. Those who blatantly carry guns, especially those for military use rather than civilian use, are all ruthless characters. Shen Fei glanced around, and all these people looked at him indifferently. It seems like this is a gray area around here. When Shen Fei came to the wine table, the bartender wiped his hands and asked casually, "What do you want to order?" "I'm looking for Crow." However, Shen Fei found that as soon as he finished speaking, many people looked at him, and some even stood up. The bartender smiled and said, "Mr. Crow is no longer around, these are the people who rely on him to eat. Boy, watch your words." Quote, "You tell him that I can help him get revenge." "Revenge? Ha ha ha, what story are you talking about?" The bartender laughed, and some of the guys laughed too. Shen Fei's face showed no emotion at all. "I can help him get to Wakanda." The bartender was stunned for a moment when he heard Shen Fei's words, and so were the others. After all, he was working under Crow, so he naturally knew more or less about the situation in Wakanda from Crow's mouth. This guy looks like a messed up guy, and he actually said he wants to help Clow invade Wakanda. What a joke. At this time, a burly man stood up and sneered, "Is it just you?" He stood up and walked towards Shen Fei like a little giant, reaching out his hand to pat Shen Fei's face, and while reaching out, he said, "Little thing, I don't know where you got the news. But you must know that there is a price to pay for talking nonsense." Quote. But his hand was instantly grabbed by Shen Fei. Soon he found that his hand seemed to be bound by an iron band, and even the bones were crackling, making the big man couldn't help but want to pull out his hand. Shen Fei continued to exert force, ka. Single quote. The big man's originally joking expression suddenly turned into pain, and he yelled, "What the hell is this?" In everyone's surprised eyes, Shen Fei bent the big man's palm directly at an angle that was not like a normal person, and then kicked him in the abdomen. So much nonsense. With a bang, the big man was kicked back to his original position, smashing the table into pieces, and 2 wine bottles were poured on his head. He was dizzy, and he was still screaming in pain. Several men wanted to make a move, but they saw Shen Fei raising his gun. "If you attack one by one, I won't use the gun. If you all attack together, don't blame me. These words suppressed several men who were acting strangely. The rest of the people couldn't help but discuss, what kind of ruthless person is this? He can cripple a lone wolf with one hand, and when he opens his mouth, he is looking for Mr. Crow. This guy is the one you can't mess with. If you haven't seen his figure under his clothes, he can kill you with one punch. The eyes of the others also turned away. In this gray area, as long as you have power, someone will respect you. At present, it seems that this Chinese man holding a gun has a lot of background, and he said that he wants to help Mr. Crow get into Wakanda with confidence. If Crow thinks I'm kidding, ask him if he knows about Hydra. Just when the bartender was about to leave, he was stopped by Shen Fei and heard what Shen Fei said. The bartender couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. What is Hydra? But with Shen Fei's demonstrated ability and information, the bartender nodded and said, then I'll go get some drinks from behind. After saying that, he turned around and walked into the back. Shen Fei was not in a hurry. This guy must have contacted Crow. This bar is often active with people who rely on Crow to make a living, and according to Hydra's records, Crow's past transactions were in this bar. The actual person in charge of this bar must be Crow. Soon, the bartender came out, handed a bottle of wine to Shen Fei, and said, drink this, and Mr. Crow will be willing to see you. Shen Fei looked at the cup of pitch black stuff and said coldly, Claude really thinks I'm asking for something from him. Tell him if he doesn't want the contemporary Black Panther to come to his door. Just come out obediently. We still have cooperation to discuss. You must know that the Avengers are now planning to bring the Black Panther into the team. You ask him, can he withstand S.H.I.E.L.D.'s tracking? Can you still hold up Iron Man? Quote. After Shen Fei finished speaking, he shook his head and turned around to leave. This guy was planning to give him a slap in the face. Just kidding. If you give him a warning before the transaction, he will take it. If he drank this bottle of wine, he should be able to see Crow, but he would definitely be overwhelmed in terms of momentum. Shen Fei didn't like being pressed down on him, and this Crow was just a dealer. If it doesn't work, he can even change his target. If Claw's information is sold to Wakanda, they will definitely be happy. As soon as the others stood up, Shen Fei's gun was pointed at them. If you dare to move, don't blame my gun for not having eyes. Before Shen Fei even stepped out of the bar, he heard someone speaking, young man, don't be so anxious. At this time, a man came out of the back kitchen of the bar. Shen Fei turned around and looked at the person who came, who looked like Crow in the information. But maybe because he lost his arms, he didn't look very good. Claw, I didn't expect you to still be here. Are you really afraid that Hydra will cause trouble for you? Shen Fei didn't expect this guy to be so bold as to sit and wait in this bar. Crow smiled and said, if I hadn't been bold, I wouldn't have stolen vibranium from Wakanda. After laughing, Crow's face turned cold. Let's go. Let's talk somewhere else. Walk, After walking out of the bar, there was already a car waiting. As soon as Crow Yang got into the car, Shen Fei said, go to another place, if you don't want those mad dogs squatting on us in your house. Crow stared at Shen Fei with eyes that seemed to choose someone to devour. He picked up his cell phone and made a call. Everyone evacuate. You destroyed one of my safe houses. Do you still call it a safe house after Hydra found out? They just don't want to mess with you, or they think it's risky to mess with you. You are actually the prey that others value. It just depends on when you need to be eaten. Quote. Not to be outdone, Shen Fei retorted that since he could obtain information about Crow from Hydra, it meant that Crow was already under their control. Either he was waiting for Crow to be of greater use before swallowing him, or he was planning to fish. Like this. This is compensation for you. Shen Fei threw out a stack of paper. Crow looked over and found that it was a pile of design drawings. Shen Fei smiled and said, the mechanical arm can be made of vibranium, which is better than your chopped one. The arms are much stronger. Once installed, you too can become a superhero. Quote. It's not that Crow doesn't understand. After all, he's a metal worker, so he can still understand such things. Looking at Shen Fei, this drawing was worth a lot of money, and it was so precise that he couldn't find it even after spending a lot of money. It contains Chidori Technologies' steel technology and Hydra's research on human structure. Can perfectly adapt to the human body. Quote. This thing is a blueprint that Shen Fei fished out. To him, this thing is just a small case. Drive. Crow glanced at it twice before speaking. The vehicle started to drive and soon appeared at the entrance of a cave. Outside the cave were people holding guns. When they saw people coming, they pointed their guns at them vigilantly. But when he saw the vehicle, he immediately put down his gun. After Crow and Shen Fei got off the car, they walked into the cave. Soon a huge indoor room appeared in Shen Fei's sight, no different from a normal house. Even the mountain walls on both sides were flattened and then paved with ceramic tiles. It's completely like hollowing out the heart of a mountain and building a house inside. You said you could help me get to Wakanda. Why? As soon as he sat down, Crow asked coldly, handing the drawing in his hand to the secretary next to him who looked like a celebrity. With this, Shen Fei knocked on his head and said with a smile. Crow didn't laugh at Shen Fei's action, because the information Shen Fei said and the abilities he had shown so far meant that he was definitely not a mentally ill person. But he still made such an action. That's something to rely on. Soon, a man in a white coat hurried out and whispered in his ear. Crow's eyes lit up, and then he looked at Shen Fei. This is indeed the real thing, it can perfectly fit the human body's nerves, and it will be worth a lot of money if sold. Is this what you gave it to me? Quote. Shen Fei glanced at the man in the white coat, who was obviously a technician. It seems that Crow verified the completeness, so now I am interested in talking to him. It's just a technology. It will be researched sooner or later anyway. Aren't you also researching it? You must have been researching it for a long time. As for money, is a robotic arm worth as much as Wakanda? Quote. Shen Fei's words made Crow's body that was lying straighten up immediately. He stared at Shen Fei and asked, how much do you know? There is much more than you think. For example, the brand on your neck, the vibranium you stole. And your plan for revenge, well, Golden Leopard. When Crow heard Shen Fei's words, his eyes changed from cold to extremely surprised, even with a hint of fear, and he couldn't help but ask, how did you know? It wouldn't be a surprise if the source of the brand or vibranium was known. Everyone in Wakanda knew it at the beginning. But later it involves his revenge plan and the leopard. No one would know except him and Jin Bao. Could it be that Jin Bao betrayed him? Shen Fei said with a smile. There are some special people in this world after all, don't you know that? Crow took a deep breath. Shen Fei's words just now clearly told him that Shen Fei was such a person. Since he deals in vibranium, he has come into contact with many people, but he often only dabbles in it. The ones who have the most profound influence are naturally Ultron and Avengers. What did you mean earlier? Black Panther, the current guardian of Wakanda and the son of the former Black Panther, T'Challa is about to lead Wakanda to the world. And he is also a candidate that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been paying attention to. You said that if the two parties communicate with each other, and you still have a huge amount of vibranium in your hands, do you think you will become a target of S.H.I.E.L.D.? The crime is to undermine friendly exchanges between the two countries. Quote. Shen Fei's words made Crow a little stunned, and there was such a statement. What do you need? Crow already believed Shen Fei's words, and the most important thing was what Shen Fei said about his revenge plan. In addition, he has also met the Avengers. If the Avengers want to deal with him, I'm afraid he won't be able to escape. This guy can tell so much relevant information easily, so he must have some tricks, but Crow is still a businessman. Not only was it a meeting gift, but it was also the information mentioned. Shen Fei was just trying to increase his leverage before the transaction. Vibranium shield. A vibranium shield similar to Cap's shield. Crow frowned. That's not a small amount, your information is not enough. Adding another 10 million can be regarded as giving you a discount. Quote. The amount of vibranium that can be used to build a shield is not a small amount. Although the information Shen Fei said is valuable, it is far inferior to that of a vibranium shield. Of course Shen Fei didn't have 10 million, but he had another way and said, I don't have any money. Crow slapped the table with his only remaining hand and made a violent sound, like a teased hyena, staring at Shen Fei. He said coldly, are you kidding me? The people around him who were on guard were also staring at Shen Fei. As long as their boss gave the order, they would immediately capture Shen Fei. I said, what do I rely on? You must have problems that you can't break through. I can help you crack it. Quote. Shen Fei knocked on his head. This was Shen Fei's way of making money. The white wolf with empty gloves needs strength and wisdom. But he prefers to use wisdom. If he had the strength, it wouldn't take long for him to kill the people here. When Crow took him into the car, Crow had no idea that his life was already in Shen Fei's hands. But he needs a partner. At present, it seems that Crow, who has a lot of wealth but weak ability to protect himself, is the best choice. As for Crow being a warmonger, forget it. How can you make money by not being a warmonger in the United States? Are you kidding? For the sake of your meeting gift and information, get out of here. Crow sneered and said that he no longer believed what Shen Fei said. He was just a liar with nothing to show for it. As for the design of his mechanical arm, he probably got it from nowhere. Shen Firen was right. After all, he had a large amount of vibranium in his own hands, so he was naturally researching many vibranium-related technologies. But although he is rich, he does not have a wide network of contacts, so the technicians he hired are not very powerful. In addition, things like vibranium have extremely special properties. It is difficult to research. This guy actually said he could solve it himself. Why not give it a try? I'm here anyway, if I can't do it. You can kill me anytime, but if I succeed, you will gain a powerful ally and a lot of things you want. Shen Fei was not in a hurry and said with a smile. The powerful learning ability and reason given to him by the master of scientific research prevent him from getting angry at all. Crow saw Shen Fei, who was still so calm even in this situation, stared at it and said, "Okay, if you can't crack it, I will kill you." Quote, "Can Lodson lead the way? Take him to the sonic arm. Didn't you just encounter a problem? Show it to him." Shen Fei, the technician next to him, looked at him with disdain and said jokingly, "Do I need to give you a few years to look at the data we studied? Is this called Shen Fei the yellow-skinned monkey a joke? How can they understand something they have studied for so long in just a short time? This involves a lot of paper research and experimental data. No, there's nothing too difficult in your research." Shen Fei naturally saw Lodson's look of disdain in the eyes of these white-skinned pigs. They have the strongest talent in scientific research. The Chinese are just better at solving problems, but scientific research is not about solving problems. Anyway, it won't be me who will die then. Lodderson said with a smile. His eyes flashed with cold light. "This yellow-skinned monkey is so arrogant, I will ask the boss to shoot this guy personally." Shen Fei glanced at Lodderson. After being injected with the super soldier serum, he was somewhat sensitive to danger. This guy had evil intentions. Soon, the three of them continued walking down, and then came to a laboratory with pure white walls. Although the laboratory inside was not as good as Hydra's, there were still many people busy. Crow disappeared after coming down, and Lodderson led Shen Fei to one of the laboratories, where three bald middle-aged men were having a heated discussion. There were some people listening on both sides. Lodderson came in and shouted, "Everyone, please stop." The people who were having a heated discussion stopped when they heard this and looked at Lodderson. The one in the middle of the three naked men laughed and said, "What did you do in such a hurry just now? I told you to tell the boss that this problem is difficult to solve. It will take some time even for those in the highest universities, let alone us. Are you a new recruit behind your back? No need, this group of rubbish can't solve anything, so we can only do something about letting so many of these scientific research rubbish come over." Among the three, Madana, who had a thin face and a beard, sneered. Lodderson shook his head and said, "This yellow-skinned monkey said he can help us solve our problems. The boss asked me to bring him over to try. Are you kidding me, asking someone who has no experience with our research to solve a difficult problem? Lodson, what kind of game do you think this is? A shit-stirring game. Get out of here, you yellow-skinned monkey. Don't waste our time." The three people laughed loudly, and Lodderson said, "This is the boss's order. As long as he can't solve it, this guy's life will be lost." Hey, you're still risking your life. Come on, you should understand these things first before talking." Madana threw the paper in front of Shen Fei's face and sneered, "Do I need to give you 10 years to read it?" At this time, Shen Fei's fingers were already turning the pages of the book at an extremely fast speed, almost 10 lines at a time. He had finished reading the research records in a short time. Is it because the vibranium has absorbed the sound waves and cannot find the corresponding medium for transmission? Do you want to create a device that uses vibranium to absorb sound waves from the outside world and then release shock waves of a specific frequency and wavelength? Can it cause great damage? Quote, even within half a minute, Shen Fei could already tell that something was being studied in the laboratory, and it was very familiar. Even Shen Fei was impressed. Crow in the MCU universe is just an ordinary vibranium dealer. Even though he has learned some skills, he is not as good as other professionals. But in other timelines, Clow is still a top physicist. With the vibranium he obtained from Wakanda, he developed powerful sonic weapons and even killed T'Challa's father. Now it seems that Crow in this timeline also has such ambitions. But look at the development. In the end, he probably failed and was even killed by his ally Golden Leopard. Everyone who was still watching the joke was suddenly stunned, because what Shen Fei said was absolutely correct. The key is that in less than half a minute, this yellow-skinned monkey had finished reading it, and even found a problem. At present, it seems that one of your molecular calculations cannot be solved. Shen Fei shook his head and didn't care about their looks. He came to the laboratory machine and started operating it. Lauderson wanted to stop him, but Crow's voice came from his headset. Let him do it. Shen Fei was checking calculations with one hand and flipping through the experimental records they placed on the experimental table with the other hand. Soon the pile of paper was used up. This thing is much easier than the super soldier serum, and they still have so much experimental data, given Shen Fei's current brain and computing power. It has long been possible to find the most suitable interval calculation among numerous experimental data. It's just that the ratio of vibranium to other metals is inappropriate. If the content of vibranium is too much, the properties of vibranium will be too great, and all the sound waves absorbed will be offset. But if the content of vibranium is too small, its properties cannot be utilized. They have never been able to estimate the material and proportions. Because the naked eye is not a computer, and computers do not have this function today, because this requires a very appropriate ratio. This ratio requires a large amount of data and people who have studied the properties of vibranium to achieve it. Currently, only Shen Fei has such ability. Try it. Shen Fei handed a stack of things to a technician casually and said with a smile. Are you kidding? Do you really think you can bluff us right now? Lauderson originally looked at Shen Fei's extremely serious eyes and actions, as well as his extremely formal experimental methods. I really thought this guy had some skills. But figuring out the best materials and proportions so quickly is a complete joke. Madana came back to his senses after hearing Claude's words, and sneered, you yellow-skinned monkey, just die quickly, you can't touch this kind of thing. Try it. At this time, Crow's voice came from the laboratory, and Crow spoke in the monitoring room. Just now, I received news from my little brother who stayed on the other side that my safe house was taken away by Hydra. And some extremely terrifying people were dispatched, jumping directly from the fighter plane in midair without being hurt. He saw an empty house, and finally his house was bombed. The person who can make Hydra go to war in such a big way is definitely not simple. In this case, let him try it. Top scientific research talents will be popular wherever they are placed. If this Shen Fei really had this ability, he would be a genius comparable to Stark. Then he will make a fortune, and even seek revenge from Wakanda, or even Ultron, who has now become Vision. The technician who took over Shen Fei's data heard what his boss said and started to try. After several operations, the molten vibranium and the three metals soon began to mix in front of everyone's eyes. Soon a special thick slurry appeared in everyone's sight. At this moment, Shen Fei pressed the cooling button, and a large amount of air conditioning was quickly applied. Are you crazy? If the temperature is so high and it cools down immediately, it will crack. Lauderson yelled, this guy doesn't know how to cause trouble here. However, Shen Fei smiled faintly and said nothing. The cold air dissipated, and soon a round metal ball appeared in front of everyone. It looked extremely beautiful. Try it. The technician quickly took it over for testing, and soon a surprised smile appeared on his face. It's done. Absorb the kinetic energy and then use the stored energy to launch and rebound. The frequency can be controlled based on the continuous passage of current. So who is the research waste now? Shen Fei looked at Lauderson, whose expression changed dramatically because of, it's done, and said with a smile. Chapter 11. At this time, Crow's footsteps came clicking, and as soon as he came in, he changed his previous lukewarm attitude towards Shen Fei. He even showed Shen Fei a friendly hug and said, "My friend, Shen. You are indeed a genius." Quote, Crow didn't expect that the problem that had troubled his research team for several months without making any progress would be solved under Shen Fei's hands just how long ago. He knew that there were some unexplainable geniuses in the world, but he didn't expect that one would appear here. Shen Fei smiled and said, "I don't like these two guys very much, they may affect the speed of my scientific research. You also know that scientific research requires inspiration. These two guys bite each other like a yellow-skinned monkey, which makes me very unhappy. If you are unhappy, you will." At this time, Crow pulled out the pistol from his waist and fired 2 shots into the mouths of Modena and Lauderson, who looked frightened, without turning their heads. 2 bang bangs shocked the entire laboratory. Ha ha ha, trash is naturally not qualified to live in this world. As a person, I only value people. Just like metal, in front of vibranium. All other metals are dull. No, there's also adamant metal. Shen Fei retorted softly, making Crow a little embarrassed. As long as Shen Yu can solve the problem, I will meet your needs. I want a vibranium shield. Can. Crow smiled and said softly to the secretary next to him, "Go get some vibranium. Do you need me to build a sonic arm for you? It won't take long." He saw that he had been busy for several days and finally got the vibranium. Shen Fei was in a good mood, and he had the means to face the Wolverine next, with Crow as his partner. As Crow becomes stronger, his plans will be implemented faster. Crow's eyes lit up. Although this Shen was not at a disadvantage in any way, he was a good person and someone who could be cooperated with. Not long after, someone was coming with a box of stuff. "This is vibranium for you, it's enough for you to build a shield." Crow said with a smile, because he also has high expectations for his robotic arm, especially a relatively special robotic arm. After Shen Fei took the box and opened it, there was a lump of metal inside. After taking it out, he hammered it down hard with an experimental hammer. But there was no vibration at all. Seeing that the kinetic energy was completely absorbed by the vibranium, Shen Fei couldn't help but nodded. Finally got it. Although it is not possible to completely defend against Wolverine's attack, with this piece of vibranium, it will be able to reduce a lot of danger when dealing with Wolverine's claws. At least you don't have to worry about Wolverine's claws scratching him to pieces. Of course, one vibranium is not enough, he needs other things to deal with Wolverine. After all, with that guy's temper, how could he be made to, obediently, cooperate with his research without some means? This laboratory is for my use. You can all go out in the next few days. Shen Fei waved his hand, and a smile appeared on Crow's face. Use it as you like. If you need any help, just ask. After Crow and others left, Shen Fei immediately started to take action. He had already calculated it just now. He was wondering if he should build any other weapon besides a shield. But I found that a round shape was the most suitable. Round shapes can offset greater stresses and the edges can bounce back. It's just that it's difficult to control, which requires Shen Fei to exercise himself. These are all things that need to be exercised. Otherwise, not every super soldier can do the fancy flying shield technology of Captain America. But it does work. No wonder Howard designed it as a shield when he designed it for Captain America. Soon Shen Fei started to take action, and the vibranium began to deform under the right temperature. This is why he needs to work with Crow. This guy has been studying vibranium for so long, and he has already completed the equipment for smelting vibranium. Shen Fei no longer needs to find equipment by himself, otherwise. It's better than using a microwave to do it. Shen Fei personally designed the curvature, thickness, etc. of the shield so that it could achieve the most perfect effect. I don't know how long it took. Shen Fei looked at the shield that had begun to cool inside the molding machine, and began to design the mechanical arm instead of being in a hurry. "Claude, please come in. I'm going to design an arm for you. And let people bring something in to eat, I'm starving." Quote. Shen Fei spoke into the lab's intercom. "I know, I thought you were Iron Man. You've been in the laboratory for 2 days. Crow's voice echoed in the laboratory. "I'm not that playboy." Shen Fei made a small joke. Crow handed a set of data to Shen Fei. "I have prepared this data." "Good." After taking it, Shen Fei nodded and said, "It won't take long for you to see your new arm." At this time, the curvy secretary walked in, followed by a woman with an excellent figure. Crow hugged the curvy secretary and kissed him. "Shen, don't you have a saying in the East that sometimes it's necessary to relax and sometimes it's important? Eat something first, take a nap and rest. This is for you." Quote. Crow looked at the woman behind the secretary and gestured. "Wait a minute, I'll eat something first and fix your arm. And if you could ask some people to train me in fighting skills, I might be even more tempted." Quote. Shen Fei glanced at it and saw that this Yangmo was indeed good looking. It was bulging forward and backward, and the pores were quite fine. It looked like it was from the Ermao side. It is worthy of being called the hothouse of European men. There are indeed many good-looking ones. Her name is Delina, she can stay here, just be by your side. If you need anything, tell her anytime. I'll have someone get whatever you need. But there are some problems that you need to solve." Quote. Crow smiled even more when he heard what Shen Fei said. Shen Fei glanced at it. If he didn't accept it, Crow would definitely not be relieved. Although this guy was taught a lesson by Ultron. My self-awareness is much stronger, but after all, I have been a dealer for so many years. He was very wary, probably because he was worried about what he was doing in the laboratory. But it's okay, just keep it. He had never tried ocean horse in his previous life, and he was not an ascetic. Now in this world, there was no harm in relaxing a little. Crow took his secretary out, and Shen Fei sat down and started eating. Calculating the data just now was still a bit troublesome for him. He's a super soldier and can't handle it without eating. But at this time, Desina squatted down and squatted into the laboratory table. "This meat is delicious." Shen Fei felt himself enveloped in warmth and took a bite of beef. The two brothers were full at the same time, which was good. After Shen Fei finished enjoying it, Desina swallowed and then rinsed her mouth clean in Shen Fei's sight, indicating that she had no other intentions. "Just stay aside while I do the experiment. Don't disturb me." Shen Fei thought it was nothing, if his genes could be obtained so easily. Captain America has long been in captivity. Shen Fei first took off the vibranium shield and held a big hammer. Looking at Desina's horrified eyes, he raised the big hammer and knocked down hard. There was a slight bang, but there was no deformation on the shield, not even a dent. "Not bad. I should be able to defend against his claws." Shen Fei nodded with satisfaction. Captain America's shield is mainly made of vibranium, with original adamantium and some other metal components added. In terms of penetrating power, Captain America's shield will be stronger. After all, compared to vibranium, adamantium can be sharpened more sharply. But in terms of absorbing kinetic energy, the pure shield he created will be stronger, so the defense will be stronger. For Shen Fei, when facing Wolverine, the greatest significance of the vibranium shield is defense. As for attacking Wolverine who cannot be killed, what he wants is to capture and study him, not to kill him. Then I took out the spray paint I had prepared. The US team had the American flag on it, so I could spray it with an S. My goal is Dachau. Isn't this the most classic symbol of Dachau? The crest of the air family. Soon, there was a red S logo in the middle, with some stripes around it like a diamond shape surrounding the S. As for the background color, he spray painted it blue. I held it and felt the weight and size. It felt quite comfortable. After putting down his shield, Shen Fei began to make arrangements. The next step is to make a mechanical arm, and continue to improve your strength before Hydra comes to your door. With those crazy dogs from Hydra, I'm afraid people here will come looking for them soon. Quote. In addition to training, I also need to crazily absorb the knowledge gained from Hydra. The knowledge capacity of the predecessor was really too little, far from enough. Next, he needs to transplant Wolverine's self-healing factor into his own body. This requires a huge amount of bioengineering knowledge. After all, the one who was able to do this experiment in the first place was the experiment done by Stryker, the father of the Sentinel, and Teslack's subordinate. Among them is the help of Teslack. And Teslack is the top genius biologist who built the Sentinel robot. It was with the help of such people that Deadpool was born. In his previous life, he was just an ordinary researcher at a failed research institute, and his knowledge base can be imagined. So he needs to recharge like crazy now. In addition to the knowledge about Hydra, he can also browse more cutting-edge knowledge about bioengineering online. After absorbing a large amount of this knowledge, he was able to successfully recognize the self-healing factor in Wolverine, analyze and understand it. Plan your future goals. Shen Fei began to look at Crow's body data and the mechanical arm design drawings. Although the robotic arm is essentially a machine, it uses various sensors, microprocessors and amplifiers to connect to nerves through conductors. This equipment can provide Clow, who has lost his arms, with extra strength and body movements. This equipment needs to be able to read the user's every move and simulate every action he wants in a timely manner. Even a millisecond of hesitation can weigh on the user and make it feel like walking on water. Therefore, the sensors of this robotic arm must be able to read every slight movement and perception exerted on its body at the nanosecond level. Its microprocessor must be powerful enough to convert these data into instructions in time and send them to the mechanical limbs, so that it can coordinate with the wearer's thoughts. It just so happened that the Chidori already had very mature technology in this area, which he could use directly. And the key is that Shen Fei is not just making a metal arm that is no different from a normal person this time. In addition to increasing his strength, it must also be able to accommodate the sonic weapon that absorbs kinetic energy and then releases sound waves. Fortunately, it is considered a vibranium alloy, and its compatibility with vibranium is quite strong. He is now preparing to develop a set of powerful, extremely sensitive and accurate sensors and microprocessors that can make the mechanical response catch up with human nerves, and need to connect many functions. On the other side, the super soldier team bombed Crow's first safe house and conducted an all-round search in all directions. Still gained nothing, as if Shen Fei and Crow had disappeared from the world. The Baron took a deep breath after learning that there was no safe house for Crow. It must have been suggested by this guy Shen Fei. This guy is like a mole and will disappear at the slightest sign of trouble. The Baron narrowed his eyes slightly. Try out all the information about Crow. This rat didn't care about him at the time. Now he's actually hanging out with Shen Fei. The assistant next to him began to retrieve all the information about Crow. Soon, the Baron discovered something. Send people to search for this area. Expand the scope and continue searching. Use satellites to find Crow and Shen Fei. The Baron pointed to an area on the map where traces of Crow had disappeared. An assistant said, "Lord Baron, if we further expand the scope of our search, it is very likely that S.H.I.E.L.D. will be alerted. Is that okay?" The assistant saw that the Baron didn't want more people to know about Shen Fei. After all, it was related to the super soldier serum, so he cleansed Research Institute 31. If we start such a big fight now, we will probably be discovered. And it's no longer a wilderness, it's close to a city. We must catch this guy Shen Fei. Not only the super soldier serum, this guy has something special too. The Baron knew much more than his assistant. He carefully studied Shen Fei's previous intelligence after Shen Fei escaped. His resume made it impossible to develop a super soldier serum. Unless there is a change in oneself. The Baron knows that there are some special groups of people in this world who hide behind ordinary people, but the Baron knows many, many more, and has even studied this group of people under his command. He suspected that Shen Fei was such a person. Putting aside his research value, this person must not be left alone if he is connected to those special groups of people. It would be almost impossible to catch him after that. Yes, seeing the Baron's expression, the assistant had to rush down to make arrangements. "Where are you, Shen Fei?" the Baron muttered to himself as he looked at Shen Fei's face on the file. A week later, in the battle room, two figures were fighting each other. One of the figures was more strange. One of the arms was a steel arm and punched the figure in front of him. The speed was extremely fast, and there was even a sound of breaking through the air. But in an instant, the shield held by another figure in his right hand was blocked in front of him. Boom. Single quote. The two figures suddenly stood in a stalemate. But at this time, Shen Fei's other hand reached out, and immediately grabbed Crow's other arm, pulled it in front of him, and threw it over his shoulder. Hey! The people around him immediately picked up their guns and became vigilant. "Get off, all you pieces of shit!" Crow yelled as he fell to the ground. Shen Fei shook his head and pulled Crow up from the ground. "Your flesh and blood body is really powerful. Why do you feel like I can't beat you even with this arm installed?" You wouldn't have installed anything on my arm, right? Crow asked doubtfully. During his previous test, several people couldn't get close to him. That's because I've figured out your attack method, but you're still not used to it. Don't let your strengths become your weaknesses. You focus too much on your steel arm. Quote, Shen Fei shook his head. He had been studying all kinds of biological knowledge crazily this week. When he had time, he went to learn fighting, gun skills, etc. from Crow's security coach. With his learning ability and body that allows him to make any movement, he is like a shriveled sponge absorbing all kinds of knowledge crazily. It's so useful, like my own arm. And it's so powerful. Crow looked at his arm and couldn't help but move it. It was almost exactly the same as his original arm. But I feel like your body feels stronger than my steel arm. Shen Fei shook his head. Maybe the strength is similar, but the strength is far inferior to your arm. Your arm can also produce waves. No matter how powerful my body is, I will still bleed and be injured when facing knives, guns and bullets. Crow smiled after hearing this. It sounds like someone's body is invulnerable to bullets and bullets. He immediately added, I'm talking about people, not monsters like the Hulk. That kind of monster is the only one in the United States. Shen Fei took the towel that Decina brought over and wiped the slight sweat on his forehead. It is true that some people's bodies are invulnerable. There are many, such as Colossus, Wonder Man, Red Tank, etc. This world is special beyond your imagination, and there are still people who can fly. Hearing this, Crow's eyes widened and he sighed. The world is so big and there are so many people with superpowers. It's really amazing. In fact, what Shen Fei said were all his goals, and the Wonder Man couple, his wife Jessica, were also Shen Fei's goals. After all, Jessica, who could fly and do research, was one of them. The two walked out of the battle room while talking, and Crow couldn't help but said, Your body must have been transformed as well. How about you help me transform it too? Yes, but it will be very painful. If you can't bear it, you will turn into a puddle of mud. Do you want to try? Isn't it painless? No pain means no effect. To get strength, you have to pay a price. Didn't you get this arm with just one arm? Shen Fei smiled. Forget it, my arm is pretty good now. I'm going to look at the research information first. I figured out the vibranium exoskeleton you mentioned, but it will take a while. After all, what we need is a war machine, not a tin can. I'm still looking for a power source to keep this going for a long time. Quote. Shen Fei relaxed his shoulders, but Crow said indifferently, Take your time, we have plenty of time. At this time, Crow's secretary pushed the dining cart over and said with a smile, Boss, Mr. Shen designed it. This is juice, please use it slowly. The two like to drink a glass of juice after the battle to relax. Crow picked up 2 glasses, handed one to Shen Fei and said with a smile, Cheers to our great cause. Cheers. Shen Fei just took a sip and frowned. The cup in his hand instantly fell and shattered. At the same time, the shield in his right hand swept away the cup in Crow's hand. Don't drink, there's something wrong. But Crow had already taken 2 sips and went in. He was startled by Shen Fei's actions and was about to ask something. The secretary drew a short gun from his turbulent chest and shot at Crow, but Shen Fei stopped him with the shield in his hand. Bang bang bang. Bullets dropped. Crow's arm suddenly began to deform and turned like a shock wave, oscillating and flashing, spraying towards the secretary, who immediately fell to the ground bleeding from his orifices. At this time, the security team hurriedly ran in. Boss, someone is shooting outside. Fight back and prepare to evacuate. Crow growled, covering his head which was already starting to feel dizzy. It seems that Hydra is here. Your secretary is actually Hydra. Doesn't that mean your life and death are under the control of others? Stop talking nonsense. Get your weapons. There is a way out. Let's go from there. Your secretary has been incited to rebel, so you still want to go back. Grab the weapons and go through the front door. It will take some time for your high concentration of ether to recover. Can you handle it? Shen Fei refuted Crow's opinion. Crow covered his head, which was a little unclear. Hearing Shen Fei's words, he could only nod his head. If you can bear it, go this way. Soon, with Shen Fei's help, Crow took Shen Fei to a warehouse, and the gunshots outside became more and more intense. The warehouse is open. Crow shook his head and said quickly, What do you want to get? There are various weapons in the warehouse, including pistols, rifles, grenades, and even rocket launchers. Let all your people rush to the main entrance and change clothes. Remember, your arms are very strong now, don't act like an idiot. Shen Fei calmly threw a body armor on Crow and put it on himself. Suddenly, he frowned and looked at a figure following them. Help me. Just as Decina spoke, Crow pulled out a pistol and turned around. In Decina's disbelieving eyes, Shen Fei shot her between the eyebrows, and the body fell to the ground with blood blooming. You won't be reluctant. Now except the two of us, no one can trust it. Crow staggered and put away his pistol. Only then did Shen Fei realize that Crow was a dealer. Don't think that he has a good temper just because he thinks he is valuable and treats him well. Is there a side road? Yes, it also leads to the front door. Crow put on his body armor and grabbed his rifle. Shen Fei had several grenades hung on his waist, a rifle strapped to his chest, and a rocket launcher in his left hand. Seeing Shen Fei holding a rifle and a rocket launcher again, Crow's eyes widened slightly. Good guy, can you still go out and fight with weapons like this? Crow took the walkie-talkie and yelled, everyone break through the front door. The two walked quickly and came to a corridor and opened the door. Da da da. Single quote. A metal storm suddenly exploded. Shen Fei had quick eyesight and quick hands. He held a shield in his right hand and blocked all the bullets. The other hand carries the rocket launcher on his body. It's Shen Fei who showed up. Call someone quickly. Put on the stun gun immediately. Anesthetic bullets. Capture him alive. Be careful, he has a bazooka. Spread out. Seeing Shen Fei with a calm expression and carrying a rocket launcher with one hand, the Hydra people exclaimed. Before they could finish speaking, Shen Fei pulled the trigger. Pong! The shells flew out with a loud bang. Flash and blood flying everywhere. The earth trembled slightly. For a moment, the number of enemies in front of him was reduced by 1/2. At the same time, the formation was also disrupted. Shen Fei quickly looked for cover while shooting at the enemy. Do it. Don't be stupid. Shen Fei yelled, and Crow, who was stunned when Shen Fei operated the rocket launcher with one hand and regarded the recoil as nothing, quickly set up his gun. Bang bang bang. Under each bullet, blood flowers bloomed. The rest of the place seemed to hear calls for help, and more people came. With a calm expression, Shen Fei blocked all the flying bullets with his shield, pulled the trigger, and another rocket flew out. The ground shook, and flash and blood spattered, creating a path. Walk. Ha ha ha, Shen Fei and I are killing each other. Crow laughed and kept firing with the spear in his hand. Only then did he realize that with his steel arm, he didn't have to worry about the recoil at all, and there was no problem holding the gun with one hand. Holding the rifle in one hand, he followed Shen Fei. These two guys are too strong. Ask for Dongri's support, otherwise, there is no way we can be his opponent. Why is a researcher so strong and has such a strong sense of combat? Is this guy really a nerd from the institute? Shet. Shen Fei moved very quickly like a ghost, blasting the road open and then drew the rifle from his waist, killing every Hydra soldier one after another. The two men killed the Hydra soldiers who came forward and retreated continuously. Moreover, they could not shoot at Shen Fei's vitals. If necessary, they would need to load tranquilizer bullets and electric shock bullets. This is worse than a regular bullet collision, and the speed is very slow. Shen Fei's current vision is enough to block it. Plus there were security personnel shooting all around. In a moment, the two of them had completely rushed out of the safe house. Crow was now much more awake and said, there is a river over there, and there is a boat I prepared. Let's go. Make good use of your weapon, the energy stored in it should be able to be used a lot. Shen Fei pulled off 2 smoke bombs and covered their figures. Crow threw away the rifle with the heated barrel, and his arm changed, appearing like a communicator before. With a wave in front of him, several Hydra soldiers who were holding guns suddenly started to bleed from their orifices. Crow laughed loudly and said, this thing is awesome. Because I set your most commonly used Changshu to the beating frequency of the human heart, if you meet some special people. It just takes multiple tries before your arm gets the parameters. Shen Fei said as he walked, the shield in his hand kept blocking the flying bullets. Crow nodded. Soon, the sound of running water sounded. Almost there, right in front. Crow was a little surprised when he heard the sound of water. He had escaped this time, although he was a little distressed that the data and vibranium fell into the hands of Hydra. In an instant, a knot appeared on the back of Shen Fei's neck, and he subconsciously placed the shield on the back of his head. Boom. Single quote. The sound of impact sounded, and Shen Fei suddenly thought of a person in his mind. Shen Fei used his strength to retreat, and Crow couldn't help but turn his head to look. A man with a noodle head and fierce eyes. His figure is second only to Shen Fei, and the most eye-catching thing is that his left arm is entirely a robotic arm. Even more exaggerated than Crow. This is the Winter Soldier, Hydra's super soldier. Shen Fei faced this person. With such obvious features, it goes without saying that he must be Bucky. He should also have been injected with the super soldier serum. However, it should be a mutilated version. Not only is the transformation of the body inferior to his, but the will is confused and it is difficult to move on one's own. And it's easy to be brainwashed. But his amazing learning ability and keenness in combat are enough to make him a powerful killer. Crow didn't recognize Bucky, so he waved the sound wave in his hand, and Bucky made a muffled sound, and blood flowed from his nose. Try a few more times, and I'll hold him back. At this time, Bucky's target had been set on Shen Fei. Shen Fei rushed forward after leaving a few words. He had learned fighting skills for a week and it was time to practice them now. Bang bang bang. Single quote. Bucky's steel arm collided with Shen Fei's shield one after another. Shen Fei's speed and strength were stronger than Bucky's, but Bucky's fighting skills were obviously better than those of Shen Fei. Every time Shen Fei wanted to make something good, Bucky would rely on his rich experience to pull back the disadvantage. This led to a stalemate between Shen Fei, who was stronger in terms of hardware, and Bucky. But there were shouts and footsteps one after another. Hurry up. Crow frowned and kept waving his arms, but Bucky seemed to be paying attention to Crow from the corner of his eye. Once he waved his arm, he would immediately move in another direction. I'm just here to catch him. Get out of here, Bucky growled, and Crow's eyes showed a look of struggle. If he threw Shen Fei down, he would most likely be able to escape. Shen Fei narrowed his eyes and said coldly, since your Hydra has planted spies around him, I had no intention of letting him go. Quote. When Crow heard this, he continued to wave the sonic arm in his hand, and he also discovered why Bucky could dodge his attack. Shen Fei began to reduce his range, and when Crow waved his arms, he deliberately accelerated his offensive and caught Bucky. Soon, according to the parameters fed back by his arm, Bucky groaned repeatedly, and soon fell to the ground, bleeding from all 7 holes. He is just a Winter Soldier. In the face of technology, even his arms are not vibranium. He is just a waste. Shen Fei saw Bucky lying on the ground and was about to pick up a shield and hit him on the head when he saw strong figures running towards him. It's the rest of the Winter Soldier. Let's go. Leave him alone. Shen Fei picked up the gun and emptied Bucky's magazine on the ground, and a series of blood mist erupted on Bucky's body. Then he pulled the remaining 2 grenades on his waist and threw them to Bucky's side. They rolled to Bucky's side, who was still breathing in and out. Shen Fei stepped forward and said, let's go. Crow saw Shen Fei's actions, how much this guy hates Hydra. Single quote. Shen Fei didn't bother to care whether he was a gay friend or an important role in the American team. It was his grandmas who dared to hunt him down and he would die. Stop talking about Bucky. If Iron Man offends him, even Stark will be killed. Boom. Single quote. The huge explosion shook all the surrounding trees, and Shen Fei and Crow finally saw the speedboat. The 2 jumped onto the speedboat. Shen Fei cut the rope with his shield and said, set the boat. Boom. Single quote. The sound of the engine sounded, and at this time there was a huge explosion from Crow's safe house, and the hill was covered in flames. Hey, this guy is here. I'll blow up this base. Crow took out a remote control and gestured with a smile. Did you just want to leave me? However, Shen Fei stared at Crow with dark eyes, which made Crow's scalp numb for a while. Isn't this why I didn't leave it behind? Crow actually heard what Shen Fei said and didn't abandon him. Hydra has been targeting him for a long time. If it weren't for Shen Fei, he wouldn't even have the power to protect himself. This time he finally understood that in the eyes of some powerful forces, his so-called vibranium dealer was just a burrito, and he could eat it however he wanted. And Shen Fei is his biggest support. With Shen Fei's mind, he can turn his wealth into strength. Strength is the greatest horizontal capital. On the surface of the swimming pool, a head emerged from the water, and a blond and blue-eyed man immediately offered him a bathrobe. Hu, Shen Fei walked out of the swimming pool. His body was so strong that the women walking around couldn't help but linger on his body. Crow, who was lying aside, couldn't help but exclaimed when he saw Shen Fei's extraordinary body, "If you go to participate in Supermodel, you definitely don't have to worry about lack of money. I'm too lazy to care about you, just let them all go down." Shen Fei lay on the chair next to Crow, and Crow waved the others down. "I'm getting ready to go, I'm done resting," Shen Fei said. It had been a week since they escaped, and they had had enough rest. It was time to get down to business. "Do you really want to go? Do you want me to go with you? I heard you said that guy is not easy to deal with. After all, we are now partners, and they are also life and death friends," so Crow's mood towards Shen Fei has improved a lot. "No, I'm ready. Team, aren't you ready for me? If you can't catch him, then I'm useless. Just stay here and help me find information about these people. And watch out for Hydra." Quote, "By the way, what are you doing with these people?" This is what Crow has always wondered about, why Shen Fei has always been keen on finding these extraordinary people. "Study them. They have such abilities. Don't you think they are worth studying?" Shen Fei said with a smile, and Crow complained, "I think you are the one who should be studied, and you go to trouble these monsters just because you want to study them. You really are not afraid of death." Quote, "Don't worry about it. Just do as I say. If Hammer Industries has archived records of Simple Arc, our exoskeleton army can be assembled. How do you know they have it, if they have it? How come Stark Energy is selling so hard? Because Hammer's side is full of rubbish." Shen Fei shook his head and stood up and said, "Let's stay here for a while first. Hydra won't be so reckless here. When we get stronger, we won't be afraid of them. Also, the Panther guy is not trustworthy. If you don't believe me, you will know after you test him a few times. He just wants to use you to gain the Black Panther's trust, and those people in Wakanda have brain problems." Quote, Crow looked at Shen Fei, who turned to leave, with a complicated look in his eyes, and murmured, "Shen Fei, you really are a monster." After one day, 2 jeeps came to a small town. According to Hydra's information, Logan haunted this area, but the specific situation was unknown. And according to the original work of the movie, Shen Fei also remembered that Wolverine came here to live in seclusion. The appearance of these 2 jeeps naturally alarmed the small town. After all, this small town was usually just at the foot of the mountain, and only acquaintances came and went. Now a bunch of strangers have arrived, and each of them is fully armed. At first glance, it is no small matter. Shen Fei got out of the car with his shield, and the others immediately got off the car. Soon, team members wearing bulletproof armor and rifles followed Shen Fei into the town, and some of them were equipped with special devices. The town had a clear view, consisting of only a few streets and some convenient shops, with each person staring at Shen Fei and the others. "Ask," Shen Fei said. "Yes." The team members all began to disperse, and soon Shen Fei's walkie-talkie broadcast the news that no one had been found. Shen Fei frowned. Was he already having love? "Boss, I discovered a poaching team." Poaching. Shen Fei suddenly recalled that in Wolverine 2, the reclusive Logan had a conflict with a poacher, and then went to the poacher. "Not found, but there are 5 poachers. Poacher. Catch him." Soon, a series of gunshots and angry shouts rang out not far away, but they subsided not long after. The team members came back with 5 people arrested, and the team member responsible for arresting them was called Andler. Andler kicked the 5 people he captured to the ground one by one. The big man at the head looked up at Shen Fei and couldn't help but said, "Why are you arresting us?" Shen Fei looked at the big man with a beard on his face, who was obviously a Nordic, and said, "What are you here for?" Boom. Single quote. Shen Fei took the gun next to him and shot the man in the thigh, and the man suddenly let out a scream. Shen Fei threw the gun back to the team member next to him and said coldly, "Don't talk so much nonsense, I'll ask you the answer, otherwise the bullet won't hit your thigh the next moment." "What are you here to do?" Quote, "Hunt," the big man next to him said quickly. "Hunting for what? I heard there's a grizzly bear in the mountains, and we're going to get a bear skin to sell." The big man next to him knew everything, and Shen Fei nodded. It seemed that he was right. When Logan was living in seclusion, he had a grizzly bear as a friend, but he was teased by these hunters and even used poisonous arrows to make it go crazy and kill 5 innocent people. Since he obtained the ability of Lord of Scientific Research, many movies and comics he had seen in his previous life came back to his mind one by one, and he even never forgot them. He is naturally very aware of this conflict, and the appearance of an ugly monster later caused Logan to go to the Footpot Chicken. "Everyone, get up. I have a business to discuss with you," Shen Fei said with a smile. A few days later, on a stormy night, a group of people trekked up the mountain with weapons in hand, and the leader's feet were kicked. Right in front, according to the intelligence I collected. The grizzly bear is right in front, Eddie, the leader, said while resisting the pain of the rain pouring into his wound. Yeah, Shen Fei didn't dare to slack off at all, mainly because he was worried that Logan would be nearby. If he was alarmed now, it wouldn't matter if he was knocked down. What if he wants to escape? That's about it. As he spoke, Shen Fei nodded and said, "Let's get started." The surrounding team members began to set up tents and rain shelters, began to cook broth, and set up hunting traps around the area. The broth began to tumble under the flames, and the aroma of meat filled the air. At this time, a huge shadow appeared in Eddie's sight. Eddie was startled and said quickly, "The bear has appeared. I see it. Start shooting. Boo-hoo." Single quote. There were sounds of breaking through the air, and the giant shadow that was attracted by the smell of meat suddenly looked up to the sky and roared as if it had been hit hard, and turned around to leave. Eddie shouted in fear, "It's going to run away. He can't escape." At this time, Shen Fei relied on his inhuman explosive power to step forward suddenly, and his whole body flew out like a sharp arrow. Eddie discovered that there was suddenly a person in front of the giant bear that was originally escaping. It was Shen Fei who had just escaped. The sudden explosion caused him to stop in front of the grizzly bear. The giant bear that was blocked in its path let out a loud roar, and slapped Shen Fei in front of him with a pair of bare paws. If the slap was real, the man in front of him would definitely fly out like a rag doll. Is this guy looking for death? Eddie and his companion looked at each other and couldn't help but say. You must know that a grizzly bear's palm has a force of nearly 1 ton, which is enough to cause internal injuries to a person and vomit blood. How dare this guy dare? But what happened the next moment made them all unable to help shouting, "Shet, is this God?" Because Shen Fei set up his shield and firmly blocked the giant bear's slap without even taking a step back. After the giant bear's forelimbs were restrained, the whole bear stood up on its own, reaching a height of 2 meters. The confrontation between one person and one bear made the people in the poaching team who saw it couldn't help but be stunned. At this time, the hands of the surrounding team members did not stop, they kept pulling the trigger, and the anesthesia needle kept flying out. Finally, the huge giant bear fell down with a crash, creating a huge splash. Who are you? At this time, a roar broke out, a figure flashed ghostly in the jungle, and a scream suddenly broke out. A figure fell to the ground, clutching his stomach and letting out a series of screams. The rain hit Shen Fei's face, but Shen Fei no longer cared about the rain and roared, "The target has appeared, act as planned." Nowadays, Logan has experienced large and small wars, the betrayal of his lover, and the death of his friends. He has lived in seclusion here for a long time. Whether it's a change in mood or a neglect of fighting skills, his combat effectiveness is no longer as good as before, but after all, he has been trained in bloody battles, large and small, and in this jungle, coupled with his inhuman physique. And those sharp claws that can tear everything apart are enough to turn him into a killing machine again in a short time. Logan stared at the fallen bear with a full beard, threw the intestines of the man in front of him to the ground, stared at Shen Fei, who was obviously the leader, and looked at his round shield. "Captain America, I didn't mess with you, shield. Because we have experienced Avengers 1 and 2, and because the United States wants to promote superheroes, heroes like Captain America who are obviously the symbol of the United States naturally use them to promote them. So even the reclusive Logan has heard about Captain America, even though they are abroad. The most conspicuous feature of Captain America is naturally his shield. Now that Shen Fei was holding a shield, he subconsciously thought that Shen Fei was Captain America. Shen Fei didn't explain, and rushed towards Logan with his shield. 3 metal claws spread out from Logan's hands, like 6 broadswords, slashing towards Shen Fei. Under his indestructible claws, he could easily cut off even the barrel of a tank, let alone just a shield. Karakara. Unexpectedly, Logan found that his claws did not cut through the shield. You are not Captain America, who are you? At this time, Logan also saw clearly that the owner of the shield was a Chinese, and he roared angrily. Wolverine, or rather Wolverine. I didn't expect that you would still be so powerful in combat after living in seclusion for so long. The shield in Shen Fei's hand kept dancing, but Logan completely gave up on defense, and the sharp claws in his hands kept scratching at Shen Fei, but every time Shen Fei was able to block the shield in time, which even his claws could not scratch. Chest. Hearing that Shen Fei knew him so well, he growled, "Are you from Stryker?" But at this time, a sound broke through the air, and Logan suddenly felt that he was being shot by needles, and the medicine entered Logan's body. Dizziness crazily invaded Logan's head. Logan, who had been woken up, was not very clear-headed. Although it was watered by the rain, it was coupled with the high concentration of ether. Shen Fei is all matched according to the size of an elephant. Logan suddenly felt something was wrong with his body. He turned around and planned to leave, running towards the way he came from with his legs as fast as a wolf king, but at this moment Shen Fei yelled, "How dare you run!" Boom. Single quote. There was a gunshot and the giant bear roared in pain. Logan couldn't help but look back. This was his partner, but that was it at this moment. Shen Fei had already caught up with him, the shield in his hand flying and hitting Logan constantly. His powerful self-healing ability made Logan extremely resistant to drugs. The dizziness just now had disappeared a lot. "Get out of here," Logan said with a ferocious expression, and swiped at Shen Fei with both claws, knocking Shen Fei back 2 steps and continuing to run in the direction of leaving. Boom. Single quote. At this moment, nets fell from the sky in an instant, covering Logan in them. The magnets around the nets exploded with magnetic force, and several large nets were stuck together, covering Logan's entire body tightly. Logan was about to use his claws to cut through these nets, but found that these net wires were extremely tough. This is a vibranium network. Thanks to Crow, this guy has a lot of vibranium. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to catch you. Shen Fei let out a breath and almost escaped from this guy. Fortunately he was prepared. Next, there were continuous sounds of breaking the air, and needles were inserted into Logan's body, and a large amount of high-concentration ether was injected into his body in an instant. Even the self-healing factor does not relieve it so quickly. Logan's eyes went dark and he fell completely to the ground. In a daze, Logan heard someone talking. "Is this the person you were looking for?" A middle-aged man with beards. "Well, Wolverine, he was one of the leaders of X Academy. But I have looked for information. Aren't most of those people living in seclusion? You found one of them. Stop talking nonsense, I'm going to start researching. Do you want to stay here?" "No, I'm afraid I won't be able to eat after watching it." Logan's eyes gradually opened, and the snow-white ceiling appeared in his sight. He couldn't help but recall the pain of being dissected and studied. "I woke up. I thought it would be more troublesome. I didn't expect that I caught you." Shen Fei raised his eyebrows and said with a smile. After successfully catching Logan that day, he hurriedly transported Logan back to New York from the Maple Leaf Kingdom. On the way, he kept taking high-concentration ether to prevent Logan from waking up. After it was truly transported back safely, Shen Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Logan stared at Shen Fei and growled, "Who are you?" "You're welcome, just call me Shen Fei." At this time, Shen Fei began to wear snow-white surgical gloves. Under Logan's horrified gaze, Shen Fei began to use a scalpel to cut open the opponent's body with different depths to test the opponent's degree of healing. At the same time, the record was recorded in the computer next to it. The keyboard was being tapped. "It only takes 5 seconds to cut the epidermis and it will heal successfully. It only takes 60 seconds to cut open the biceps of the arm and heal successfully. It only takes 65 seconds to cut open the seminal vesicle and heal it successfully." Shen Fei kept experimenting and typing on the keyboard to enter data. Although he had the ability to be a master of scientific research, it did not mean that he could skip all experimental procedures immediately. The equipment here is still a bit not very smart. If it is Stark's set of equipment, assisted by artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence will automatically record, and most of the work required can be completed by just talking. That is the real efficiency. Shen Fei sighed. My efficiency is still too low. It seems that I need to upgrade my related equipment later. Crow was still too poor. You have to find a way to make money, otherwise even if you have strong research ability, you will be unable to make a meal without straw. Quote. Shen Fei muttered while working. Logan was lying on the experimental table with a helpless look on his face. Blood was flowing all around him. People coming in from around him collected all the blood that flowed out. Shen Fei put down the record book in his hand and ordered, extract his blood, red bone marrow, yellow bone marrow, tissue fluid, germ cells, stem cells, and prepare the sections. Yes, if he resists, inject him with ether and the neurotoxin I've prepared. Those are vibranium magnetic handcuffs, he can't break free. Also, watch out for his claws. Shen Fei took off his white coat and walked out of the laboratory with the research materials in his hand. Just as he was about to compile some statistics to see how far Logan was healed, his cell phone rang suddenly. Shen Fei took it out and it showed that it was Crow. I found the person you were looking for, but because we are in the city, we cannot use personnel. I will have someone send the information to your computer. Good. By the way, Golden Leopard wants to meet you and have a chat with you. The day after tomorrow. I still need to do some experiments tomorrow. By the way, find me some experiment volunteers and mark them as life-threatening. I got it. I hired a secretary for you. This secretary is clean and has signed a contract to sell herself. You can use it as long as you see it. Didn't I say no? I definitely want it, lest you forget to eat by then. Remember to balance work and rest, otherwise all my partners will die on the experimental table. Shen Fei hung up the phone and returned to his room. Now they live in a large villa in the suburbs. There are many rich people living in the community here. It is also one of Crow's safe houses, hidden away from the city. In the New York City area, Hydra would at least not make a big move, and a large-scale search like before would be impossible. The underground is the laboratory. In order to conduct research at all times and prevent the research materials from affecting other people, his room was moved underground. After returning to the room, Shen Fei first sorted out the information. Wolverine's healing ability is about 5,000 times that of ordinary people, and the effective one is the self-healing factor. And the key is that he discovered that Wolverine's self-healing factor is more like a catalyst, speeding up the healing of wounds but not consuming itself. There are secrets here that I couldn't even imagine. Shen Fei looked at Wolverine's healing data and murmured, why this kind of self-healing does not require energy consumption, it must be the effect of the self-healing factor. Every mutant's genes are a treasure trove. Now that Logan has just acquired it, he has discovered that the so-called X gene of mutants can reverse the laws of physics to a certain extent. The bosses are really cerebral palsy. Every mutant is a treasure. They are actually afraid of their abilities and choose to kill them. Thinking of the original ending of the mutants, Shen Fei couldn't help but cursed angrily. But now the United States is also implementing a strategy to eliminate mutants. For the sake of our own ability, we have to let the United States cancel this law. After writing down all the information, Shen Fei opened his computer and opened the information Crow sent him, which contained a profile of a person. Jessica Jones. A typical white beauty, it records her experiences and sees the school she attended. No. One middle school. Peter Parker. We have to find an opportunity to acquire Osborn's shares. At least we have to acquire all their biological research laboratories. Shen Fei murmured, putting his own assumptions behind him, which he would discuss later. He returned his attention to Jessica, which was his next target. Treasure Girl. A heroine with super strength and the ability to fly. She is a high school classmate of Spider-Man Peter Parker. On a trip to Disney. Because she and her brother were arguing in the back seat, her father, who was driving, was distracted to comfort them. Their car collided directly with a military truck loaded with radioactive chemicals, killing the whole family. Only Jessica survived, and was taken to the hospital and fell into a coma for several months. When she woke up, she found that she had gained flight and powers far beyond ordinary people. Afterwards, Jessica was adopted by the Jones family and changed her name to Jessica Jones. His flying ability is currently Shen Fei's best choice. In fact, there are better targets, such as the Fantastic Four's Human Torch, Thor, etc., but the Human Torch and Thor are too strong. And there is a team behind them, neither the Fantastic Four nor Avengers Shen Fei can afford to offend them now. So I'd better do Treasure Girl first. The key is that her ability is an acquired mutation, and it is also caused by radiation, which makes it very reproducible, even if the probability is very low. With his scientific research ability and his own ability to absorb the extraordinary ability of the evolutionary spirit, as long as there is a probability, he can push it to 100%. The Kana Detective Agency. Has been closed all year round. Could it be that she has already met the Purple Man? Shen Fei was constantly analyzing the situation and making plans. During the period when Jessica gained her powers, she was keen on becoming a superhero, but not long after, she met a man, also known as Purple Man. His abilities are mental hypnosis and control. Although Jessica has super strength and flying, her mental resistance is that of an ordinary person. She was controlled while preventing the Purple Man from committing crimes. He was constantly insulted both physically and mentally. Although he was finally saved by the Dark Phoenix, he was depressed for a long time. It was not until he met Luke that he regained his confidence. You two are truly my treasures. Shen Fei murmured after reading all the information, but this is a bit tricky. To be honest, Logan must be stronger than Jessica in terms of physical strength, but the key is that he is a loner. In addition, he lives in isolation and knows his weaknesses. No matter how large a force is dispatched, how can he escape? But Jessica can fly. Once she misses, it may be harder to catch her next time. Plus, New York is a place where you can hit a superhero if you throw a brick. Whether a large force was dispatched or Shen Fei went to catch it himself. They are all easy to be spotted, and the Black Braised Egg monitors extraordinary people almost to the point of going crazy. If there was a showdown between extraordinary people, it goes without saying that Shen Fei would definitely be targeted. Now there is Hydra staring at him behind his back, plus S.H.I.E.L.D. Especially the Braised Egg Man, he has a trump card behind him. Captain Marvel, that kind of cosmic level figure, he can't afford to offend even more. But I definitely have to acquire the ability to fly. Otherwise, I'm not a Superman. The ability to fly is a standard feature of Superman, and many superheroes are land-based. If Shen Fei could fly, he would be invincible against many superheroes. After getting all the data, Shen Fei locked the door. Tomorrow he would really explore the secrets of Wolverine. Shen Fei got up after resting for a while, went outside for a swim and sobered up. As for Crow not being in the villa today, he probably had to deal with it beforehand. After all, although Crow started his career by selling vibranium, he doesn't mean to just rest on his laurels. He still has some business under his belt, otherwise how can he support his scientific research? Both of his safe houses were destroyed, and the safe house in the cave was already a very important scientific research base for Crow. Such a self-destruction would definitely cause heavy losses. Although most of the information has been reserved. Shen Fei got up from the swimming pool and was about to get a towel. At this time, a graceful woman handed the towel in her hand to Shen Fei. Thanks, Shen Fei responded subconsciously. At this time, he raised his head and saw a large red wave coming into Shen Fei's sight. Shen Fei couldn't help but look at her. She saw a woman who was obviously of Eastern European ethnicity. Her eyes were moving. Shen Fei smiled and introduced. My name is Needly Northman. I am the secretary arranged by the boss for you. Hearing this name, Shen Fei soon realized who it was. Crow, you are so capable. Natasha got them all for me. Something's wrong, I shouldn't be the one S.H.I.E.L.D. is targeting. Why would Natasha target herself? No, you should be focusing on Crow, not yourself. It just happened that Crow was planning to find a secretary for himself, so he took the opportunity to come in. Clean net worth. Of course you are innocent. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. each have dozens of identities. You will naturally be as innocent as you want. In an instant, Shen Fei quickly understood the relationship inside. Good. Shen Fei tried his best not to show anything strange. After all, Natasha is a professional spy, and he will notice the slightest change in her expression. You go prepare breakfast for me. I like Oriental food. After Shen Fei dried himself, put on his clothes and said, Okay, I'll let someone do it. Looking at Natasha's twisting back, no wonder so many people are obsessed with him. But Shen Fei was indifferent. Too ugly. She is beautiful, and it is more in line with the aesthetics of Eastern people, but her pores are too enlarged. He doesn't like enlarged pores that look like pits. And he doesn't like buses. Although buses have been improved many times for a better experience for more passengers. It's very comfortable as soon as you sit down, but the smell is quite strong. A private car is different. It may not fit in at first, but it is yours after all. As long as you are optimistic, it won't be said that many people have driven it. Shen Fei lay on the chair thinking about what happened next. Crow was really unreliable. His previous secretary was from Hydra. The secretary he hired now was from S.H.I.E.L.D. This guy has mastered so much vibranium and metal business, and coupled with his lack of strength, it can be said that he is just a piece of fat that others can eat if they want. Just after escaping from the wolf's den, he enters the tiger's mouth again. However, Natasha, the secretary, is still very dedicated. At least she will give benefits when doing things. The breakfast was quite enjoyable for Shen Fei. Soon, Shen Fei appeared underground. As for Natasha, he sent her away, but it seemed to be just what she wanted. Before leaving, Shen Fei sent a message to Crow, telling him Natasha's true identity. Walking into the laboratory, people here were busy and saw Shen Fei coming in. "Boss, it's done. These people are technicians trained by Crow, who are relatively loyal, and their families are under Crow's supervision and can still be used for a certain period of time." Shen Fei nodded and looked at the operating table. Logan's body was covered in blood, and there were some hideous wounds that were healing. The bright red flesh and blood were turned out, which looked a bit scary. Shen Fei looked at the wounds on Logan's body and said, "You are really a treasure. With such an ability, you actually don't want to study it and let you wander in the wild." Quote, "Kill me if you can." Logan panted and stared at Shen Fei. This day he woke up and fainted and woke up again. Those ethers and neurotoxins kept pouring into his body like they were desperate, sometimes just because he yelled. Shen Fei shook his head, his eyes slightly hot. "Why should I kill you, if I can't find your brother? You don't have to suffer such a sin, I just want to analyze your abilities. It's okay, I should be able to release you after I finish my research. Let's see if you can cooperate." Quote, Shen Fei drew a big picture casually, mainly because he hadn't thought of how to deal with Logan yet. It's almost impossible to kill Logan. His self-healing ability cannot be killed by a nuclear bomb. He kept scanning the cell sections at various stages, looking at the difference between the cells during self-healing and normal times, and nodded, "You all can go out. Cells don't change much, which means the key lies in genes." After everyone went out, Shen Fei picked up a syringe, drew a tube of blood under Logan's angry eyes, and put a drop of blood under the electron microscope. Suddenly, a double helix-shaped thing appeared in front of his eyes. That is 2 deoxyribonucleotide strands coiled around a common central axis to form a double helix structure, which is the DNA in the body. DNA, also known as deoxyribonucleic acid, is an organic compound with complex molecular structure. Found in the nucleus as a component of chromosomes. Its function is to store genetic information. He kept moving the microscope, and soon the microscope's sight locked on a very special place. He immediately zoomed in again, and the double helix DNA suddenly showed a more complex and advanced structure from a larger perspective. It is originally a double helix structure, but this part of the structure looks like some genes are very special, as if it is out of place, but it fits perfectly. This is the origin of the X-Men, the X gene. Shen Fei began to look at the gene constantly, trying his best to see the structure inside it clearly, and soon he rubbed his eyebrows and said, "This is too complicated. If you don't have the molecular scissors to cut DNA, I'm afraid it will be difficult to completely copy it into yourself." Quote, "Although he has the spirit of evolution, he can completely absorb all extraordinary powers without conflict. But he needs to study it before transplanting it into his body. Although the X gene structure of this self-healing factor is very complex, it doesn't matter to Shen Fei. The key is that he doesn't have the right tools to accomplish his goals. Infection with genes. Shen Fei could only settle for the next best thing and get some of his self-healing abilities first. He planned to use Logan's genes to infect some of his body's genes first. He also has a way to solve it, but with this method, it will be difficult to reach the state of Logan at his peak. It can even be said that it can only be an incomplete version. And it requires a lot of experimentation. Shen Fei pressed his temples. He must obtain this self-healing ability so that he can protect himself in New York. Crow outside hurried back after receiving Shen Fei's email, which was outrageous. The person he found for Shen Fei turned out to be someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. In the tea room, Shen Fei handed Crow a piece of paper and said on the phone that there is probably a bug here. Crow nodded and said, I'm fine. How about you recently? How did you sleep? And sent his finger on the phone, what should I do? Do I want to fire her? Single quote. It's okay. How did you eat? Shen Fei wrote on his mobile phone, no, this will alert the enemy. Single quote. Volunteers will come in the afternoon. Single quote. Single quote. Comma. The two of them were talking about something, but the mobile phones under their hands were sending different content. Shen Fei also didn't know that Black Widow had made great achievements in Avengers 1 and 2, but her lurking skills were still perfect, which was really outrageous. This is the power of S.H.I.E.L.D., it can modify a person's life experience and background at any time. Shen Fei suddenly said. Osborn Company lost the support of the military region because of the failure of the old guy Norman's research on new products. The stocks are plummeting. If you have the money, try to buy their stocks. Quote. Okay. Crow didn't know why Shen Fei said this suddenly, and nodded quickly. Osborn is a biological company, and I've seen what they're researching. That Norman guy should be researching a human strengthening serum, which has other benefits for human body strengthening. Shen Fei gave another long explanation, and Crow soon realized what Shen Fei was doing. Plan to distract S.H.I.E.L.D. from focusing on him. With S.H.I.E.L.D.'s peeing skills, they will definitely investigate. I had to sacrifice you, Green Goblin. Single quote. Norman Osborn is Peter's good brother and best friend, Harry Osborn's father, the famous Green Goblin. The two soon started chatting about Osborn, with Shen Fei doing most of the talking and Crow listening. Osborn. Natasha listened to the information coming from the headset and quickly passed the news back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Osborn was actually studying this kind of thing. And who is this Shen Fei? Why does Crow trust him so much? Natasha is also eyeing Shen Fei. Although her target is Crow, recent intelligence shows that he has developed a relationship with the leopard who escaped from Wakanda. The Black Panther is the development target of their S.H.I.E.L.D., and people like Crow who have a grudge against the Black Panther are naturally under their investigation. Not to mention having contact with people in Wakanda. But she didn't expect that Shen Fei, who was beside Crow, seemed to be highly regarded. In addition to the information about Osborn that she suddenly got, Natasha thought about it and sent it back together. With her sense of being a spy for many years, she felt that Shen Fei was something special. She actually wanted to go into the experimental area to have a look, but now that she had just entered an important place like the experimental area, it would definitely affect a lot of things, so she had better wait for 2 days. Soon, Natasha's headset was connected, and a rich male voice came from there. Don't worry about that Shen Fei for now, he's just an ordinary technician. Osborn's information is very valuable, so Crow should keep an eye on it. The debate over the Hero Act has become increasingly fierce among the Avengers recently, so go and find out what the rest of the group is saying. Quote. Going again. You have to remember that any mission of a spy must be completed by any means necessary. Yes, Shen Fei and Crow chatted for a while and then left, and Crow had to deal with things again. Now that S.H.I.E.L.D. is targeting him, he is naturally unlikely to let Leopard come here again. And during his communication with Jin Bao, this guy did have other thoughts, but he couldn't figure it out, so he decided to let Shen Fei come. Now let's deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. first. Shen Fei came to the laboratory. The laboratory is considered safe now. The laboratory has already been cleared of people, and Shen Fei can only do the next research because it involves his own body data. Although mice are needed, he himself also needs to conduct multiple experiments to test the data. On the operating table, Logan was injecting nutrient solution because Shen Fei gave him a large bottle of high-concentration ether and he was still sleeping. But now it seems that Logan is about to wake up. Try the fusion of tissue fluid first. Shen Fei picked up the syringe next to him and was about to draw Logan's blood when Logan suddenly opened his eyes. Wake up. Surgery? I'll take another tube. It's just a few tubes today, don't worry. Shen Fei comforted him by saying that mood will affect the hormone levels of living things and may affect some data. Get out. Kill me if you can, you devil. Logan growled, thinking that his experience with Stryker was his last. From that time on, he swore that he would never be studied with dignity like a guinea pig again. But why? Why? Shen Fei just tried to comfort him, and in the face of Logan's desperate eyes, he extracted blood, lymph fluid and other tissue fluids. Then extract the corresponding liquid from yourself. Start playing drums on the experimental bench. Lymph fluid doesn't work. Arterial blood doesn't work either. How could the platelets in it be so active? Are you treating my blood as a foreign object? Shen Fei muttered, and the despair in the heart of Logan next to him added another layer. This guy has done his research. Why do you keep talking when you were researching? It would be easier if you just talked normally. But what he was studying now was what was inside his own body, and the more this guy talked about it, the more frightened he became. This guy didn't take enough blood, he actually took a lot of things from his brother. Is this okay? The knowledge Shen Fei absorbed from Hydra also had corresponding biological knowledge about transplantation. Some solutions were quickly prepared, and the concentration was continuously increased, reaching one of the limits. Soon Shen Fei discovered that the venous blood had begun to merge with his arterial blood. It's almost done, just waiting for the volunteers to arrive. Hearing Shen Fei's words, Logan was stunned. It was almost the same. What on earth are you studying? For the first time, Logan felt a little afraid of this guy. I'm afraid that if I don't think of a way, I will fall into the hands of this person. Although he won't die, but he has been imprisoned and his blood is taken to obtain various things, so he might as well die. But the only person who responded to him was Shen Fei, who kept pressing a certain machine. The needles were filled with transparent liquid and inserted into Logan's body. The clear liquid continued to be poured into Logan's body. Logan, who had just woken up, fell into a drowsy state again. He only had time to say, "You," and fell asleep again. If you weren't worried that ether would affect the experimental data, you would have been awake long ago. Shen Fei said to himself, even reinforcing the magnetic handcuffs. Crow's men were very efficient, and soon 6 volunteers were sent. Because we need to collect data and see if there are differences among different races, we have 2 of each of the 3 races, black, yellow, and white. However, Crow probably considered Shen's non-Chinese identity, so the yellow people he sent were all chickens. In the laboratory, after the medicine wore off, Logan woke up again and saw the 6 people being pushed in. A trace of pity flashed in his eyes. This devil. He is actually still conducting human experiments. Because of his identity and the experience of being experimented by Stryker, he kills every scientist who uses human bodies to conduct experiments. You executioner. Logan growled. A Wolverine who fought in several world wars and killed a lot of people calls me the executioner. That's an honor. Shen Fei shook his head and motioned to the assistant who pushed the volunteers in to take off all their clothes. I have made it clear that this experiment will be very life-threatening. If you die during the experiment, a sum of money will be sent to the account you left behind. Shen Fei said. Hey. The 2-footbath chicken men nodded repeatedly, and the other 4 people also nodded to indicate that there was no problem. Then it begins. After finishing speaking, Shen Fei picked up the scalpel and needle and began to copy his previous experiment. Soon, all kinds of ghostly cries and howls appeared. After all, the continuous extraction of various tissues was extremely painful, and to avoid affecting the nerves and experimental data, Shen Fei did not even use anesthesia. Listening to the howls of ghosts and wolves in his ears, Shen Fei did not waver at all. As long as he entered the experimental state, he would enter a state of absolute calm. In this state, even he himself can become the material for experiments. And these 6 people should have already expected that being able to give such a large amount of compensation would actually buy their lives, unless someone is lucky enough to survive. Experimental subject number 2. The blood sugar in the blood is too low, causing the self-healing factor to increase and the self-healing speed to be slow. Experimental subject number 4. The tissue fluid really contains too much protease, and it was found that the self-healing factor cannot be fused. Experimental subject number 1. The fusion speed is normal, continue to increase the dose and try other tissue fluids. Continuous experimental data is being entered, although Shen Fei himself has the spirit of evolution, that can offset the limitations of integrating extraordinary powers and the conflicts between extraordinary powers. But it doesn't mean that he can fuse whatever he wants. It needs to be able to give people abilities, such as this self-healing factor. For example, if a person without the X gene is injected with this self-healing factor, there is a high probability that the cells will undergo apoptosis during self-healing or develop into uncontrollable cancer cells. Because they don't have the X gene, but Shen Fei doesn't. As for breaking through the conflict of abilities, he is able to master the abilities of both the Human Torch and Iceman at the same time. It is like he has infinite card slots in his body. As long as you can create the card, you can put it into his body. Stop their mouths. Shen Fei frowned and kept yelling, which affected some of the assistants. A few rags were stuffed into the volunteer's mouth. Look at him, he didn't even scream. You screamed so miserably. The scalpel in Shen Fei's hand accurately cut the skin of one of the black men. The black man's face turned pale with pain, as did the rest of the people. After he recovered, he looked at Logan, who was almost occupied by Shen Fei, who was taking various liquids every moment. But he just stood there, as if nothing had happened. What kind of perseverance is this? Too much ether injection. Shen Fei looked at the stunned Logan and murmured in his mind that because of the frequent injections, Logan's resistance to ether was rapidly increasing in a short period of time, and the dose of ether that needed to be injected to stun him was getting larger and larger. Sometimes a heavy hand will cause too much injection and I will wake up in a daze. He was already thinking about how to deal with Logan. It would be easy to catch the wolf but difficult to deal with it. Shen Fei has been staying in the laboratory these days. With the help of Hydra's many knowledge and the data from so many experiments, Shen Fei took a deep breath. He has cracked the sequence of most of the genome. If he wants to make a genetic infection solution, he can do it now, and he makes statistics based on various data. It should be universally applicable. As for the 6 volunteers on the operating table who were serving as guinea pigs, they were already dying. But Shen Fei is still using various means to hang his life. His strikes were accurate and his scalpel was very stable. He would not do anything that would hurt their lives, even if the steps were a little cumbersome. Because he still needs them to display the results of the final step. Shen Fei held several bottles of solutions in his hands, most of which were Wolverine's various solutions and some blending agents. Because they were genetically infected, he didn't have molecular scissors yet and couldn't cut them. So Logan is still raw material. A bottle of solution in his hand constantly changes color. The solution in his hand is continuously injected, refined, and finally put into a shaking machine for shaking. It should be done. Shen Fei turned on the shaking machine, and a bottle of solution as bright as a purple gem appeared inside. If the formula calculation was correct, this was the solution he wanted. Experimental subject number 1, injection. Number 1 was a black man. As the needle continued to be pushed in, the black man's face suddenly turned pale and he growled, "You fool, give your father a good time." Shen Fei didn't care about this at all. He gently scratched the surface of his skin with the scalpel in his hand, and a wound appeared, bleeding profusely. Failed. Wrong. Soon, in Shen Fei's sight, the blood that was still flowing from the wound began to stop. Moreover, the wound quickly scabbed and fell off, eventually forming a faint scar. Shen Fei raised his eyebrows and exhaled, succeeded. The plan, Phoenix 1 foot, was successful. Mr. Shen is so awesome, are you God? Mr. Shen actually made a superhero. Mr. Shen is really a genius. The assistants around looked at this scene and couldn't help but cheer loudly. The other 5 experimental subjects also saw this clearly and were so shocked that they almost forgot their own pain. In this way, they witnessed the birth of a superhero. This is especially true for Logan. He is extremely familiar with his own power. Isn't that his superpower? Although the speed was much slower than him, it was still copied by this madman. For a moment, his worldview collapsed. He felt that mutants like them were the chosen ones, so they had abilities that were different from ordinary people. But now he discovered that his abilities could be cracked and copied. How does this prevent him from doubting Lang Sheng? Smelly yellow-skinned monkey, let me go quickly. I'm a superhero now. Experimental subject number 1 couldn't help but yelled when he saw his wounds healing so quickly. He felt his body getting stronger. Continue the experiment and compare the self-healing abilities of Logan and number 1 here, as well as the energy consumption and wound changes. Shen Fei calmed down and did not immediately prepare anything for himself. He was very cautious and continued to let his assistant experiment. The big lip of experiment station number 1 was about to say something when he heard Shen Fei's words. So his mouth shut. It just so happens that he has the ability to heal himself. Sew it up and let it stick together, Shen Fei said calmly. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.